This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of council for Tuesday, October 3rd at 7 o'clock. I have to start our meeting off in a good way. I'll slow down to give Councillor Ma a moment. Councillor Ma is going to read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Before I say that, I just want to, on behalf of council, thank TWN for inviting us out on Friday for their Truth and Reconciliation event. It was, on a personal level, very moving and very touching. So on that note, we respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Councillor Ma. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Any errors or omissions from the agenda is presented? Hearing none, will someone please move adoption? I've got moved by Councillor Back. Is there a seconder for the matter? Seconded by Councillor Forbes. Call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. Council, we have a set of minutes that's been circulated from the June 27th special meeting of council. Are there any errors or omissions to those meetings as meeting minutes as presented? Hearing none, will somebody please move their adoption? Moved by Councillor Muir. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Ma. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. Thank you very much. At the front end of every meeting of council, we have a period of up to 30 minutes for members of the public to share concerns of import to them. And we start with a speakers list where people can sign up at through the clerk's office ahead of time. But I will, if we do have a number of speakers who've signed up in that regard, but only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so if other members of the public would like to add their name to the list at that time, I'll check in with the group at that point to see if anyone else would like to address council. So the first speaker that I'd like to call on is Jeff Fox, followed by Joe Inkster. Jeff Fox is joining us in person here, I believe. I don't see Jeff Fox. Has Jeff Fox switched to joining us virtually?
Yes, he's online.
Online. So if we can move Jeff Fox over to the panel, that would be great. Is that happening?
Not yet.
Recording in progress.
All right, we're going to have to check back in with Jeff Fox. It does appear to be joining the meeting virtually, but we haven't been able to get him to accept going over to the panel. So we'll check back in just a minute on that. So the next speaker I have is Joe Inkster joining us virtually.
Am I live there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome, Joe Inkster. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Great, thank you, and good evening, Mayor Little and council. Yes, my name is Joe Inkster, and I'm a Handsworth grad from many moons ago, born and raised in the surrounding Edgemont community. I have many family and friends in this community, and I currently live in the Edgemont Grosvenor Connaught building, directly across from the townhome development proposed at the corner of Ridgewood and Ayr, which is being considered by council tonight. I think it's fair to say that my neighbors and I will be amongst the most, some of the most impacted by future development here. The site is located literally across the street from our underground parking entrance, and we pass the site daily when coming and going from our homes. Personally, I'm an avid runner and start my daily hill climb right up Highland, so I go by this site. I know the site well, and I think it's an excellent location for new homes. I've seen the project details, and I really want to see this development move forward. These townhomes will help more people to find much needed housing that suits their needs on the shore, whether that be families looking for more space or conversely seniors looking to downsize. These homes will facilitate opportunities for aging couples to move out of big houses they don't need anymore and free up options for families, growing families in need of that space, and to help keep all these good people and families here in our North Shore community and bring in new ones. I know you have a busy agenda tonight, so thank you for your time, and I very much hope this project will move forward.
Thank you very much, Joe Inkster. I'm going to go back to Jeff Fox now that we can see you on the call. You are muted at the moment. Can you unmute and can you hear me? I can't hear you. It still says that you are muted within the Zoom system.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council. Oh, you're muted again.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Jeff Fox, and I'm a lifelong resident of the District of North Vancouver and a 30-year homeowner at 2043 Casano Drive. I'm opposed to the proposed tax exemption requests for Hollyburn Family Services Society, comprising of 5 addresses for the years 2024 to 2027 and the intended use of these addresses. My home is located directly across the street from 2038 Casano Drive, a house that has been used as a Hollyburn Services Group facility for the past 5 years. During this time, there have been the following same repeated incidents. Regular attendance by RCMP over the years to deal with violent occupant situation, 4 to 5 police cars arriving at once in Block Street. Violent occupant has been arrested and taken away in some cases. Lights on in windows 24 hours a day, no windows coverings and violent occupant has been nude, unclothed, and visible to women, family, and children from the street. No window coverings, windows regularly smashed out by violent occupant and covered up for months by plywood, degrading the appearance of the neighborhood. Garbage regularly strewn by employees and the violent occupant on grounds and left for days. Garbage cans tipped over and left for days, attracting bears. Masks and gloves left on the grounds for days with staff walking by and not picking up. Violent occupant smashing out employee car windows parked in the driveway. Employees no longer park in the driveway and homeowners cautious of parking vehicles in the driveways for fear of damage. 4 to 6 cars coming and going at 7 a.m., 4 p.m., 11 p.m. with shift change. Parking in violation of bylaws. Staff occupy street parking in exact same spots on street 24 hours a day, hampering fire and emergency vehicles and taking parking away from homeowners. Vehicles parked backwards on the road, some employees being malicious and purposely blocking my driveway. RCMP report raised against this individual. Broken down vehicles with loud mufflers arriving and leaving late at night, in the morning. DMV bylaws attending regularly wasting taxpayer resources. Employees and violent occupants smoke cigarettes and cannabis in view of families and children daily. Cigarette butts thrown on the property, with property littered with thousands of cigarette butts blown onto the street for children to pick up. Employees and violent occupant using the FU towards neighbors. Male employees using the FU words to my wife Heather when she has told them to be quiet for their shift at 11 p.m. and not conduct loud meetings with loud music playing and driving on the street. Employee dog put on the roof as punishment, and employees regularly leave dogs barking in cars while employees on shift. I have documented in photos, videos, and RCMP police reports each of these incidents and have reported to NDP Susie Chant and Bowen Ma and other district city politicians and DMV bylaws. Thank you, Council, for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next speaker we have is I'm probably OG Dojkic. Is that fair? Joining us virtually. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
How did I do on the name? Terribly sorry if I got that wrong.
Pretty darn good. It's okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. My name is Ogi Radojcic. I'm a partner and director of operations of Gooseneck Hospitality Group. We own and operate Bufala located in Edgemont Village. I'm quite involved with the opening of the restaurant, the day-to-day operations, and continue to spend quite a bit of time in the community. I've called in tonight to offer some brief comments in support of the townhouse home development that's being proposed along Ridgewood Drive, and it's being considered in tonight's agenda. As someone who spends quite a bit of time in the community and employs quite a bit of local residents, I can't help but express great support for this project. I think it'll help provide more family-oriented housing. It's, I believe, pretty dense with about 30 units or so, and that'll help support small-scale independent businesses like our own. It'll help with not only hopefully provide housing for additional staff, but as our business, we cater to local families. So as I'm sure you can appreciate, we'd welcome more people being in the neighborhood as well, right across from our restaurant. And, you know, hopefully they like pizza. So that's all I've got for you this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address council tonight. And I hope you support the plan for more homes in the Edgemont community.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next speaker I have is Brian Platts. Brian, can you hear me? Joining us virtually?
Yes, can you hear me?
Clearly. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. I'm Brian Platts at 3187 Beverly Crescent. I'm speaking in favor of agenda item 8.8, West Group Properties proposed 32-unit townhome project on Ridgewood Drive. As council is aware, the project site was identified for multifamily development in the Edgemont Village Center Plan, which was developed with extensive public input over a year-long process. It is important to note that West Group's proposal fully complies with this plan. It should also be noted that the project meets a number of planning objectives, including providing a variety of unit sizes, including 4 fully accessible units, which is very important to me, for people with disabilities or local seniors looking to downsize to Edgemont Village, achieving the passive house design environmental standard, the inclusion of extensive bicycle parking and repair station, adding greater diversity to the housing stock around Edgemont Village, and providing, most importantly, relative affordability compared with the new multi-million-dollar single-family homes in the area. This development application should be an easy one for council to approve. From my perspective, I live just 2 blocks from the site, and I'm looking forward to the project being a new addition to my neighborhood. I therefore urge council to pass first reading and refer the application to a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Brian Platts. The next speaker I have is Jamie Kokoska. Jamie Kokoska, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Great, thank you. I'm here today to speak about some of the learnings we've had as a community that is already living with a homeless shelter in our neighborhood, given the proposal the DNV has put forward to open a new shelter on Keith Road. I'm going to be careful not to name any entities today in a negative light, but you can connect the dots. The feedback we've received is that certain housing societies that manage these shelters do not fully cooperate with the RCMP in helping to identify suspects staying on premises or identify criminal activities taking place within the shelter itself. Before the latest housing society was appointed to manage the shelter on Marine Drive, the Lookout Society oversaw the building. And for the most part, we did not see a significant increase in crime in our neighborhood at that time. Granted, the shelter was half the size it is today. But I'm told the Lookout Society does cooperate with the police in keeping residents and community members safe. A new housing society took over that property after 1 year and remains the manager of our local shelter to this day. Almost immediately from the day they took over, there was a marked and significant increase in crime in the neighborhood. And we're told this management society is currently not cooperating with the RCMP's efforts to locate individuals and decrease crime in the neighborhood, We are all obviously very frustrated that the society was chosen to manage our local homeless shelter, and this feedback should be especially important to you given the housing society implications when it comes to management of the new shelter on Keith Road. Given this, I would strongly suggest the DNV consider enacting a new bylaw that ensures all supportive housing management agencies and societies that operate within the DNV must fully cooperate with the RCMP to ensure the safety and security of the community and other shelter residents. While it's a bylaw that frankly shouldn't have to exist, it could provide the DNV with another lever to pull should a problematic housing society be put in charge of the new Keith Road project or existing shelters. As I understand, these appointments are generally made by BC Housing at the provincial level. Having a bylaw could provide grounds to force a change should the police or greater community indicate there is a problem with an appointed shelter manager. Thank you for taking the time to hear my feedback today.
Thank you for your comments, Jamie Kokoska. The next speaker I have is Lyle Craver. Lyle's joining us virtually.
Thank you, Your Worship. Be it noted that I had originally asked to speak at the agenda item, but be that as it may. When the TransLink levy came in, roughly 20 years ago, we were told that it was for the purpose of gathering funds that would eventually result in SkyTrain to the North Shore. That was the plan. And at that time, I even discussed it directly with the mayor himself, who was then a councillor. Now, given the range of housing prices on the North Shore, what that means is that on a per capita basis, North Shore residents have been paying considerably more than their fair share of the tax levy for a very long time, and always been at the back of the queue for TransLink. What that means is that the last time new infrastructure, new routes to the North Shore, depending on your point of view, would be in the time of Prime Minister John Diefenbaker for the second Railroad Bridge, or Pierre Trudeau in 1972 for the C-Bus. Frankly, as taxpayers, I think we can and must expect our elected representatives to do better than that. Again, for the last 20 years, TransLink has considered the North Shore a cash cow to be extracted and to raise cash, irrespective of the amount of services provided to the North Shore, pretty much the whole time. Most municipalities would consider that unjust. Most municipalities in Greater Vancouver would consider that fighting words. And I am mystified that the district and the other North Shore municipalities are now expected to accept this as a substitute for what we were promised. The whole point about rapid bus systems is that they do rely on the road system. And every time you take paths, take lanes of traffic for a specific purpose, what that means is that you have congested driving for other road users. In addition, rapid bus is going to demand priority access to our traffic lights, irrespective of the needs of the people actually using the roads in the area. Again, how this helps reduce traffic congestion is a complete mystery to me. Bottom line is, we have a problem here. And if we accept this proposal now, we will forever lose any chance of getting what we were promised at the start. So, Council, I plead with you, don't adopt this resolution, and don't be so quick to settle for a fraction of what by rights local residents should expect. Again, I asked to give this at the item, but I was refused by staff. But thank you for hearing me tonight.
Thank you, Lyle Craver, for your comments. We do have more time to speak, and I see that the virtual hand was raised by Hazen Colbert. Yeah, so we'll go to Mr. Colbert, followed by Todd Sams. So Hazen Colbert, can you hear me?
I can, Mike, and I'm sorry, I can, Mayor Little, and I think you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Welcome.
Yeah, and thank you to the staff and to thank you to staff and also to council. I'm speaking tonight about the North Shore wastewater treatment plant. Some of you, well, all of you, in fact, I've emailed all of you the contract for the lease of the lands. That contract was initially agreed to in 1961, and then in 1963 it was codified in writing, and then in 1983, 20 years later, what happened was that the agreement was amended slightly, such that going forward, unless all of the parties agreed, and those parties were Metro and Ottawa and the Squamish, unless all the parties agreed, that contract would be renewed every 20 years for 20 years. And it was backdated to 1981, and it was actually renewed again in the year 2021, and then in 2001, and then in 2021, and believe it or not, it was renewed in 2021 for another 20 years, going out to the year 2041. I want to make this very clear. I am one of the very few people that have this contract, and I have it, and the lease agreement, and I have it because Alan Nixon provided it to me in the year 2013. He also provided it to the chair of Metro Vancouver in 2019, who Mike knows, and he also provided it to Guy Haywood. In 2019, a person that runs a all I want to say, in 2019, there was an attempt to use FOI to glean this contract, which was denied by Metro Vancouver. However, myself and 3 other people already have the contract, which makes it very, very clear, and you guys have seen this. On page 13, who has signed the contract? You guys have seen this. I want to make this clear. The claim was made by the Squamish that the land was stolen from them, and the wastewater treatment plant at Lions Gate was built without their approval. Well, guess what? You can see on page 13 that the Squamish Indian Band chief and every member of the council signed the lease. And not only did they sign the lease, they signed every page. This is a legal contract in Canada, which I expect to be enforced. We're not moving the plant. Let me make it. Hello? Hello?
Yeah. Hi, Hazen. I can hear you. If you could draw it to a close, that would be great.
So I also now want to read something. It's an Acciona press release. And this is important. Please understand. I think this is important, from 2017. And it says, Acciona, a global infrastructure and renewable energy group, has been awarded a Canadian $525 million contract by Metro Vancouver to design, build, and commission a new wastewater treatment plant for the Vancouver region in British Columbia. That is not true. You guys can look it up.
Mr. Colbert, I'm very sorry to do this, but I do need you to draw to a close. We are over a minute over time.
This project is worth $4 billion. Can I just, finish? I'm going to be less than 20 seconds. The CAD 525 million is not true. It's actually US dollar 525 million, which worked out to 700 million. So what I'm going to say in closing is, there are a number of very serious problems here. Can we properly have the RCMP and other people look at this matter? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for your comments, Hazen Colbert.
Okay.
The next speaker I have is Todd Sams. Is Todd Sams here in person? Oh, joining us virtually? Okay, yes, I see T. Sams, there you go. Todd Sams, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Welcome, I can hear you. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen, please, if you don't mind. I'm hoping that you can see that.
I see privacy fence at
Okay,
Leighton
super.
Drive, yes.
So thank you, Council and Mayor, for taking the time to hear us out here. I'm going to go a different swing on things, and I'd like to talk to about our own personal property. I just
Mr.
wanted
Sams,
to.
Mr. Sams, can I just interrupt for a sec? Is there a
Yes.
way for you to make that full screen? It's very
Oh.
hard to read the font.
Let's see
If you
here.
can make it full screen, that might help.
Oh,
And so if you start slideshow, which should be one of the buttons in the bottom, near the bottom right corner, about an inch off the bottom right corner.
you got it. Sorry about
That one right there.
My
That's
apologies.
it. You got it.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. It's in regards to our own private property. I want to talk to you about privacy fencing, and I live in Blue Ridge. And topographically, it's very, very difficult for this location. Not unlike any other location in North Vancouver. As you can see here, the slope on our fence on our property line, we are lower than our neighbors. And I just want to show you this from this perspective because based on the bylaws today, you can only have a total of 8 feet high fence from your property. And as you can see here, it ranges as it slopes down on the retaining wall from 3 feet 2 inches all the way down to 1.5 inches. So basically what I'm trying to at least show you is that where the property starts, where the 8 feet would be eligible, would only be for a 10 to 12 foot span. And then we would have to drop down to a 4 foot 8 inch fence and then slowly go up again. With that being said, our property really does not allow for a privacy fence. Basically, because of the normal situation and the bylaws, the existing policy, as it states here, height restrictions are 8 feet, starting from 25 feet down on each side of the back property line. Height fence it would take into consideration a retaining wall, in which we are at a disadvantage because our neighbors are higher than us. All I'm asking is simply allowing us to have the privacy of an 8 foot fence along the side, the southwest side of our home. And all I'm asking for council would be their consideration to relax the bylaw or consider an amendment in this situation. So we as normal citizens would have the ability to have privacy. In this situation, we have no privacy, and all we're asking for is the ability to have a little bit of privacy in our backyard with our children, as well as our hot tub and our friends. We're just looking for some privacy in our own backyard.
Okay. Probably the best way is if you, have you already sent an email to the mayor and council? I don't recall a Leighton one coming up.
I have
but
not.
If you can send an email to us, we can follow up with staff and see what can be done. Sometimes hardships of minor changes can occur through the Board of Variance, and we can see what may be able to happen there. But probably the best first step is to send us an email with the slides that you've presented.
Very good. I've sent information to the district, and they've suggested that I talk to the council and the mayor. So I guess I went the other way around, but I'd be happy to send.
I'd really appreciate it if you could send us that email as well.
Indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. The last speaker that we have is virtual speaker Nick. And I see your virtual hand there. Nick, are you able to? There you go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you.
Actually, just before you get started, we just need to clear the slides from the previous speaker. All good? Okay. All right, Nick, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, council, for hearing me this evening. I appreciate the time. I am here to speak about the proposal for the development at 1031 to 1045 Ridgewood Drive. I grew up in Edgemont Village. My parents still live there. I went to Cleveland Elementary School, went to Handsworth Secondary School. I am fortunate enough to say that I still live in the area, although I'm in Pemberton Heights. And when I say I'm fortunate enough, it's because I think probably I'm in the 5% or fewer of those who I grew up with who are still fortunate enough to live in the area. Obviously, it's known that housing affordability is an issue in the neighborhood, and that's certainly not going to be solved by this project, but it's going to add some diversity of housing that is severely lacking in the area and density that we need. The young families are having a lot of difficulty moving into the area, as you all know. And this density is going to help them a great deal. It's also in close proximity to Highlands Elementary, to daycares, to rapid transit. So it ticks all the boxes as far as allowing people to be close to amenities, grocery stores, as well as allowing them to use public transit and therefore being environmentally kind of responsible. I cannot imagine a world where this project would not be approved. Edgemont Village has been reinvigorated in the recent years by the addition of density. And I heard the owner of Buffalo just speak. Edgemont Village was a quiet, sleepy place, which maybe appealed to a lot of people for many years, but it really has come alive in recent years with the addition of additional housing. I feel very, very strongly about this development. I hope that some of my friends and contemporaries can move back into the neighborhood because I know they desperately want to. And I wholeheartedly support this development, and I hope the council agrees. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Nick. Okay, that concludes the public input period at the front of the meeting. I believe I got all of the speakers. We do have one person signed up to speak to item 8.8 at the time, and we'll make sure they have an opportunity to speak then. Okay, the next item that we have we'll be starting with delegation, and welcome Kathy Peters. As you're getting settled there, I do just want to say, the difference between a delegation and a normal public input is that they have an opportunity of up to 5 minutes to make a presentation. They represent a nonprofit organization within the community. And at the end of the 5 minutes, there is an opportunity for council to ask additional clarifying questions from the delegation as well. So it is treated a little bit differently from conventional public input. And so at this time, I'll welcome Kathy Peters. You have 5 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Your Worship. Human sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, and sexual exploitation for the purpose of prostitution is the fastest growing crime in the world and here. What is human trafficking? It's recruiting, transporting, transferring, receiving, holding, concealing, harboring, or exercising control over a person for the purpose of exploiting them. Stats. 13 years old is the average age of recruitment, much younger for Indigenous girls. In the Lower Mainland, the target age is now 10 to 12-year-old girls. 54% in the sex trade are Indigenous, 70 to 90% in urban centers. They are severely overrepresented in the sex industry. 82% involved in prostitution had childhood sexual abuse or incest. 72% live with complex PTSD. 95% in prostitution want to leave. It is not a choice or a job. 90% of prostituted persons are pimped out or trafficked. So organized crime is involved. Crime follows the money, and traffickers make hundreds of thousands of dollars per victim per year. Only 1 to 5% of individuals get out of the sex industry. The majority experience mental illness, drug addiction, commit suicide, or are murdered. I've been raising awareness about sexual exploitation and child sex trafficking to every city council, regional district, MLA, MP, and police agency in BC since the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act, PSEPA, became federal law in 2014. So the police would enforce it, the public would understand it, and be able to report it. The law has 4 parts. It targets, number 1, it targets the demand by targeting the buyer of sex and profiteers who are criminalized. Number 2, it recognizes the seller of sex as a victim who is immune from prosecution. Number 3, there's supposed to be exit strategies in place to assist the victim out of the sex trade. And number 4, there's supposed to be robust prevention education programs so youth, children, and the vulnerable are not pulled into the sex industry. The law focuses on the source of harm, the buyers of sex and the profiteers. The clear statement from Parliament was that girls and women in Canada are not for sale, that they are full human beings with dignity and human rights. This law is not enforced in BC. Vancouver and Toronto are global sex tourism hotspots. Canada is a child sex tourism destination. The global sex trade is growing very fast. It's targeting children where the money is, fueled by the internet where most of the luring is taking place. The contributing factors are globalization, unregulated technology, limited law enforcement, and very little prevention education. Canada does have a new National Human Trafficking Hotline number, 1-833-900-1010. Pornography, and nobody talks about it, is fueling the sex industry and creating the market for commercially paid sex. Men and boys are the buyers of sex and are the key to end exploitation. There needs to be a focus on education with young men and boys to not exploit. So what can council do? Reduce the demand by targeting complicit businesses and diminish supply by education and public awareness. So what are the businesses involved? Unregistered massage and body rub parlors, nail spas, day spas, modeling agencies, tattoo parlors, escort services, cheap bars and hotels, men's clubs, Airbnb, VRBO, casinos, strip clubs, organized crime clubhouses, bus stops, homeless camps, and tent cities are typical covers for sexual exploitation. So the sex industry is targeting youth, children, and the vulnerable. Schools are the recruiting grounds for gangs and sex trafficking. A critical deterrent is a school liaison officer program. The officers prevent crime and protect the vulnerable. Officers have now been reinstated in Vancouver. They were removed from New West and Greater Victoria schools, and organized crime can move in. BC is the furthest behind every province in Canada by not enforcing the federal law or providing prevention education. So I have 3 asks. Number 1, could I follow up with a deeper dive presentation to council to examine more specific steps? Number 2, could I present to the police board? And number 3, could you write a letter to the new federal justice minister, Arif Virani, that the federal law PSEPA needs to be enforced consistently in all of Canada, along with a national rollout campaign? Please CC the BC Premier David Eby, Solicitor General Mike Farnworth, and Attorney General Nikki Sharma, because BC is neither enforcing the law, providing the funding and training needed to enforce, and has no publicly visible prevention education strategies. I can provide templates. And by the way, here's my book. I have given a couple copies to the mayor. Thanks so much.
Your timing is incredible. That's a tremendous amount of information to convey about a very serious subject and in a short period of time, but I think you've done it very admirably. Council, are there any, I see councillors Back and Pope. Councillor Back, your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do I need a motion to receive the delegation?
Moved, okay. Is it seconded by Councillor Pope? Seconded, okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peters. Firstly, thank you for your tireless advocacy on this topic over many years. I've followed your work and we've been able to chat a little bit, but I'm very glad that you're here and have presented us to us tonight. You've given a bit of a picture on the federal level and in BC. I find it disturbing that we're so far behind the other provinces. Can you give us a little bit of a sense here on the North Shore in terms of the scope and size of the problem of human trafficking as it relates to the North Shore?
Okay, so we have Canada's #1 sex trafficker went to Sutherland High School and is from North Vancouver. He's currently in jail for 23 years. He did ask to get out, and fortunately that was refused. So, and he was pimping out how many girls? We think about 28 girls, 11 of them underage, 4 of them from the North Shore. Lonsdale Quay is very vulnerable. Park Royal is very vulnerable. I go down there and just can't believe what's going on. This is going on in all of our schools. I am getting complaints now from teachers. There is pornography viewing. So I'm getting elementary school teachers phoning me and going, boy, these grade 4 children are acting out sexually. What's going on? And I said, well, they're hooked on pornography. Go to your principal. And the principal says, well, say nothing. This is only going to get worse. And just so you know, I was flown to Ottawa to present, and I did bump into the mayor there in Ottawa. I did get to present to the Federal Status of Women Committee. So it's a real problem. We're so close to Vancouver. This is an international community. So you've got new migrants here from other countries. They will be vulnerable to being trafficked, or they will traffic because they make so much money at it. Also, what else can I say? You've got Indigenous bands here. They're very vulnerable. And Vancouver's a port city, and we're close to Vancouver.
Thank you. Just in terms of your 3 asks, we do have representation on the police committee. So perhaps my colleague, Councillor Hanson, might, as our representative, may be able to chat on that. But I see this as perhaps an opportunity for us to connect with the other 2 North Shore councils and discuss it jointly. But again, thank you very much again for your work and for presenting. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Pope.
Yes, I also support your 3 asks, and I would like to see us do more on this because I think that the awareness is still not there. I was so glad to see you at the recent UBCM conference, and we chatted extensively, and I bought your book, which I haven't had a chance to read yet. However, I'm very aware that this is an enormous problem. I think it's probably bigger than most people imagine. I think it affects the children in our schools and young women and young boys who are in elementary and high school. It is just so shocking and disturbing to hear that the average age is 13 years old. You mentioned that BC is a global destination for sex trafficking. What do you mean by that?
Well, Vancouver is a fabulous place to come and visit. I mean, it's always ranked as one of the most beautiful places in the world, and it's a port city. So it is a global, it's the US State Department cited Toronto and Vancouver as the global hotspots in all of Canada. Now, the advantage with Toronto, all their police have training and they're really addressing it. And also Ontario is best practices. They're 30 years ahead of us easily. And we're just not doing anything in this province. There's not the political will provincially to do anything about it. In Alberta, there is. So they're 20 to 30 years ahead of us. When I presented to the RCMP at their human trafficking webinar for the whole country, everybody was saying the same thing, organized crimes pouring into BC.
Yeah, it's all really disturbing. And, you know, what goes on online is just, it's just overwhelming to think about, and the amount of pornography our children are exposed to. It's really horrific. So thank you very much for all of your hard work on this. I'm wondering if you want to hold up that hotline number again. I actually did some research on this myself, and I have talked to those people several times on the hotline. They actually answer the phone, and they will provide anyone with an ear. And if any of our constituents are concerned that their children may be traveling down this path, I strongly recommend that they call that number, and they can discuss what signs they're seeing and learn if their kid is being targeted or if it matches the modus operandi of the traffickers as such. So I would recommend that. Thank you.
Yeah, just my own comments on the matter. I mean, if people think that this isn't happening here, I can tell you it absolutely is. One of my daughters regularly hangs out down in Lonsdale Quay and a few other places. She takes the bus around town, and she has had other girls in her peer group come up to her and tell her the terms under which they could start making money, we'll say. And so if anybody thinks that it's not happening in North Vancouver, I can tell you absolutely with certainty that it is happening in North Vancouver, and we need to address it. I definitely want to express my appreciation for you carrying on this fight. I did have a clarifying question about the police committee. I think you and I chatted about it at the Union of BC Municipalities, and I was racking my brain. I think you came to the police committee. Now we've changed out the superintendent and inspector since then, but it was about 2 years ago. Is that?
I think it was longer.
It was pre-COVID before
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Okay, well, we'll definitely sit down. I'll be the chair of the police board starting again in January, and we'll find a time to make sure that we can receive the delegation through that body. Yeah. Do I see any other? Councillor Murray, you wanted to comment?
Thank you, Kathy, for your tireless work. Just in regards to that meeting, Mayor Little, I'd like to understand why British Columbia doesn't enforce the federal law, why we're so behind other provinces in the country, and why that is. If we're a hot spot, why are we not enforcing this? So maybe you could ask that question at that meeting and
I
come back
know
to
they
us.
have brought forward human trafficking charges before, but you're saying that that's a different statute.
Well, with the law that we have actually goes after the sex buyers, and that is not being enforced in British
But
Columbia.
why are we not enforcing that? Like, why are other provinces so ahead of us and
Seems a fair question. And I think the other piece that's, and I get that this is just a small part of it, is we haven't had a port police in Canada since the 1980s, since about 1987, I believe, was when, 1990s. It was the Chrétien government canceled it. Ujjal Desange was the premier of the province of BC, and he won the premiership fighting on that exact issue, that the federal government was canceling the port police, and he was fighting it, and that's how he distinguished himself and became the premier of the province after Glenn Clark and Dan Miller and all of that. Ujjal Desange became that. But then, sorry to take you down the rabbit hole of Canadian history here, but then after that, he switched to the federal Liberals that he fought against in that campaign and became one of their ministers. And the pressure sort of stopped there. The matter wasn't pursued. We desperately need port police because quite a significant portion of this actually does originate and gets managed from those spaces, including the footprint of organized crime in the Lower Mainland. And so it's definitely something we need to address. I know the Mayor's Committee for Metro Vancouver has been pursuing it recently, and Mayor Harvey's been pushing it because their Delta port, less than 1% of the containers and ship products that come through the break bulk and such actually gets inspected. And so it's a tiny proportion that actually gets eyes on. The rest of it just gets waved through. And in lots of cases, it has stolen car parts, it has whatever else, but it's feeding into the organized crime footprint in those port spaces. And so another area we definitely need to pursue. But any other questions from the council? Proceeded delegation has been moved and seconded and prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Again, on behalf of the council, thank you very much for your advocacy in this area.
Thanks so much.
Council, as we progress through the meeting, I thought it would be prudent to propose a consent agenda. I'm going to be recommending items 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4. All of those are up for adoption. Would any member of council like to take any of those out for further discussion? Okay, that consent agenda has been moved. Is there a seconder for the consent agenda? Seconded by Councillor Ma. Call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries.
Mayor Little, based on the input from one of our speakers this evening, could we look into the issue of
I think it's
his
absolutely
comments?
fair. I don't know that suspending Holly Byrne Family Services tax exempt status is the best tool to use because they do a lot of very good things in our community, but it definitely gave us a tremendous amount of information that I think we can act on and follow up with Mr. Stewart on that one. Okay. Thank you very much. So then returning to the regular order of the evening, the next item up for discussion is item 8.1. And was there a mover for the council schedule? Moved by Councillor Pope? Or you wanted to discuss it?
I want to move number 2 to discuss and agree upon changes and then approve this amended schedule. There were 2 options presented.
Correct.
So I want to move option 2 to discuss and agree upon changes.
Okay, what proposed change are you contemplating?
So just as a little bit of background, I would like to see us have more council meetings and fewer workshop meetings. I think that what we need to do is move forward on the many items that the public wants us to move forward on. Am I to make my case at this point, or am I? So my proposal is to, as far as the calendar goes, it really only would apply to three different months: January, April, and July. And so during those months, we would take out one workshop meeting and schedule in one council meeting. And I'm including July, even though there's only one workshop in there, because as you know, councillors, we got extremely bogged down last July with so many things happening on the last day before the summer break. And I think if we add in another council meeting there, that would really help even it out over the month of July before the summer break. And in regards to the rest of it, I feel that, we're here to do the people's business. And some months, many months, we have 2 council meetings and 2 workshops. And so I feel that we can make things happen more quickly if we have more regular council meetings where we're in here discussing and voting and moving forward important issues. And I also think it serves to, in reducing the number of workshops, I think it serves to make our workshops more focused and targeted in our goals. So those are basically the outline. That's the outline of my reasons for wanting to move forward with number 2.
So I just want to clarify with the clerk. So then, sorry, would you be referring this back to another meeting to go over the potential dates and change it, or you want to change it on the fly tonight based on those recommendations of those 3?
I think the option 2 calls for discussing the changes and approving the amended schedule.
And I saw that wording, but I think it probably would be more clear that we refer the matter back to a council workshop for further discussion would be sort of our normal way of doing that. I just want to be clear.
Okay, I just want to be clear. So we'd be referring the decision about reducing the number of workshops to another workshop.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, well.
I think that's the normal way we would handle it. That's an opportunity for back and forth discussion about the merits of the case. And so if you're amenable to that, if otherwise you can try to change it on the fly. It's just a little clumsy compared to us actually setting it aside in another meeting with a couple of options presented. Because I did just want to say, I would have a big problem with us not having a workshop from a space, because sometimes it's routine things. It's things that come up from staff, from transportation or whatever,
Sure,
but to go entirely from June through till the 3rd week of September without a workshop, it makes it hard for us to manage those. I don't know I'd want to trade that out. And I guess where do you want to have the discussion about that? If you want to refer to a workshop, we can have the discussion. Great. If you want to do it on the fly here, then let's get a speakers list set up and let's have a discussion about it.
Yeah, I just want us to move forward and more quickly on the many items and issues that are facing the district.
It's been seconded by Councillor Back. Is that correct?
I'll second it for discussion. Yeah.
Okay.
Worship, I had Councillor Hanson. Your Worship,
Councillor Hanson wanted to second the alternative motion, which was to refer it to a workshop.
yeah, the motion I have on the floor is moved by Councillor Pope, seconded by Councillor Hanson, that the schedule be referred to a workshop.
I think your original motion was actually was option 2. But anyway, in either case, either of them progress with a debate and discussion right now. And so the floor is yours to talk about the merits of this issue at this time.
I think I've stated mostly my case for wanting to do that. And I think it's important that we make a decision quickly on this so that it can change the schedule as of January.
Thank you. Councillor Back, additional comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have had typically a lot of workshops or committees of the whole, as they're formally called. And in my opinion, we don't always accomplish a whole lot in those workshops. I think they are often used as a place to discuss issues that we can't necessarily find consensus on, when in fact, they would be most beneficial if they were used to dive deeper into some issues that require a little bit more than the formalities of a regular council meeting provide. But I think on the whole, we've had too many workshops over the last term of council and so far in the first year of this council. And I think by having more regular meetings every month, we would have shorter, more efficient meetings, but be able to get more done in a more efficient way. And I think one workshop a month should be enough time for us to delve deeper into some of those issues that do require a bit more time and a bit more council discussion without the formalities of a regular council meeting. So I would prefer to see more regular council meetings on the calendar for that reason. I agree with all of Councillor Pope's comments. I think particularly as we get up to the holiday times and both the winter holiday time and the summer break, we do tend to see our regular council meetings get quite long. And even, most of our regular meetings are going sometimes longer than they need to be, and we could be accomplishing more if we had more regular ones. So I'm all for less workshops and more regular meetings.
So just my own comments on the matter. And I guess I'll ask a question of the clerk first. Can you recall, sorry to put you on the spot at this, but can you recall how many special meetings and workshops we added to the council agenda this last year?
Oh, I don't have it in front of me, Your Worship, but we have those statistics. I can provide that.
3 or 4 is the ballpark.
I don't recall. I'd have to look.
So when we've been backed up in the past, we just added a special meeting of council. My recollection is there were about 3 special meetings of council called in the last year. And so we don't wait for stuff to get too backed up. Most of our council meetings, overwhelmingly our council meetings finish on time or ahead of time with enough space for us to be able to do reports at the tail end of it. And when we have been bogged down with additional decisions that have to be made, we've just added additional special meetings of council. I don't recall a time that the council's pushed back against that or rejected that. And so that's a tool that we use. On the issue of workshops, I find the workshops extremely valuable to be able to hear more information from staff on a particular issue. I'll acknowledge that there have been some issues where it's been very hard, as Councillor Back mentioned, to find consensus. We've had issues where there have been 3-2-1-1, split on council where there wasn't a clear direction to be found. I find that that's still better to manage that in a workshop format than it is to try to reach a consensus and wordsmith a motion in a regular meeting of council. And so again, still, I find value in the workshops as they are. My recollection is we did cancel a couple of workshop nights this last time around because reports weren't quite ready on time or we were waiting for key information. And so my view, and maybe it's probably a view simply from this chair to some degree, is that we've been responsive in the past with cancellations when we've needed to. We've added meetings when we've needed to in order to address issues. And very few of our meetings go full-time overtime and have to table items to future meetings. And so I would say we actually have a fairly good balance at the moment. 2 or 3 years ago, we definitely had series of busy times, particularly in the spring as we were heading into the summer. And I do recall that we had items that were tabled from meeting to meeting to meeting, and that got very frustrating for everyone. But we were able to add additional meeting times to be able to clear up those backlogs. So I feel like it's been responsive. I find that I get good value generally out of the workshops. And so my preference would be to not change the mix of meetings. The next speaker I have is Councillors Murray, Hanson, Ma, Pope, and Forbes. We've brought everybody out to talk about this issue. So Councillor Murray.
So we used to go way back when. We used to go sometimes till midnight on council meetings. We had a council meeting every Monday night. And part of the reason we went so late was because we didn't have speaking time limits, and we would hash out an issue at a regular council meeting. So we then decided to go to a committee of the whole to be able to take big issues and discuss them in a more informal way in the committee room, to be able to sort of hash out the issues, pull it apart, put it back together, give direction, some direction to staff, and then they would put the item on an agenda, and then we would be able to make our comments and then move forward. I think what's happened to the workshops over the last several years is that they've turned into presentation opportunities, and they're sort of mimicking an agenda item process. And I would much rather get back to having staff or ourselves bring an idea to a workshop and discuss it without the presentation and without the preconceived direction that I felt over the last several years, because I think it's defeated the purpose of what that workshop was meant to give council. And but in saying that, so I think that's one issue that I have. I think that we have been pretty good at adding meetings when we need to. Agendas are populated by initiatives, development initiatives, or budget initiatives, et cetera. And some nights they're quite, minimal. Other nights they are a bit tight. I will say that I agree that by the time we get to the end of June and the end of July, it is this feverish pace of items, and they're big items that are populated on these agendas, and it's too much. So I agree that we need to fix that. And I would hope that we fix that before next summer. It has been a problem for years, and it has not changed. So I do think we need some work in this regard, but I think removing the workshops, I won't support it. I think the workshops are invaluable, but I think the process and the structure of the workshop needs to go back to what it was originally intended to do, which was give council an ability to informally discuss an item rather than doing it in here and having people sit through our gripping discussion every Monday night.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I wouldn't support changing our schedule on the fly tonight. None of us, I don't think, came prepared for a discussion of the balance of workshops and regular meetings. However, I do share the sentiments put forward by the speakers tonight. I believe two things. One, it could be productive for us to have a discussion with respect to the balance of workshops and regular meetings, and I'm happy to have an open mind in that discussion. I think that discussion could be combined with a broader discussion of how we go about these meetings. There may be improvements that we can arrive at. I personally would like to see the meetings perhaps more frequent. I'm happy to attend more meetings, but I'd like them to be more focused and have perhaps more efficiency in the way they move action items forward. So those would be my comments. And I'm not sure what motion we're actually voting on now. If it's the motion to change the schedule on the fly, I'll vote against it. But if it's the motion to refer this back with a view to contemplating the balance of the meetings, workshops, and regular meetings, and also to consider how we can perhaps increase the efficiency of the meetings, I'm very much supportive of that.
And I think the best use of our time at this point, we have a speakers list. Let's just go through it, hear what people have to say, and then maybe we can have the discussion about what the best next step is at that time. So the next speaker I have is Councillors Ma, Pope, and Forbes. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I respect the opinions of my colleagues and the speaker, the colleague putting this motion forward. But I actually find the workshops to be valuable, but my comment would be to look at ways of improving it. For the most part right now, it's staff and council members, but it's kind of structured, and sometimes discussions get too long-winded. Not everyone has a chance to have their input, so I would like to look at that. But keep the current structure. Potentially we can invite people to these workshops where we can engage them so we can get a deeper dive in issues instead of making decisions on our own and trying to run off and meet with them individually. That I find inefficient. And maybe it's because I'm a new councillor and I'm still learning who I should meet with and when. But I like the format it is in terms of the balance between council meetings and workshops. But I would like to look at maybe changing the efficiency or making workshops more efficient. On a second note, this calendar is great. I know that, at least for myself, we all ran for council to serve the community, but we also have our family life. So it'd be nice to have everything in here. So I would know about future dates. A couple of things that, if possible, if we can put LMLGA in there, I think that date's available already, May 1st to 3rd. And do we know the Metro Vancouver Council of Council schedules yet? I know. So it would be nice to have those in the calendar as well. So
Yeah,
we can set aside the time.
Don't get those very far in advance.
Okay.
Well, a few weeks, but not to plan out a year's worth.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Heard a vote for time limits and workshops there. Is that? Okay. The next speaker I have is actually, if I can go to first time speaker, Councillor Forbes, that'd be great. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the advantages to being the last one speaking is a lot of what I was going to say has been said. So the first thing that stands out to me about the value of workshops is the public gets to come and they get to talk, hopefully for a little bit longer than they talk at public input at a council meeting. We don't get a public showing up in masses for every workshop topic, but there are some topics that come to workshop that the community is really involved in, and we've had the workshop committee room full. So my first priority is that the public gets to come to that, gets to hear us hashing things out with a little less formality than happens at a council meeting, and they get to have a little bit of time, if there's time at the end of the meeting, to speak to us. I also was going to mention that special council meetings can be called when we get overloaded. So it's not necessary to adjust this because either we can fit things in on this schedule or we call a special meeting. That's pretty easy to do. As far as workshops, though, I do agree that I found them to be somewhat prescribed before we even get to the workshop. And I think that we do a lot of listening to presentations and we don't get much opportunity sometimes to speak back, or the agenda has been sort of set before we get there. So I would like to see workshops more focused and streamlined. And I believe that we did have a discussion, or we were going to have a discussion about doing that, defining the workshop. And I just wanted, the last thing is, I think the informality of the workshops has its bonuses. It may have its negatives too, in the fact that we have to schedule an extra council meeting, but I do think it has the bonuses. And this, looking at this schedule, the regular meetings and the workshops total 34 meetings. 34 meetings in 52 weeks. I know I'm not counting that we get August off. I don't think that's over excessive. So I think we can accommodate workshops, regular council meetings, and when necessary, special council meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just before I go back to Councillor Pope for the second time, I did just want to note that we have put aside a time on Tuesday, October 24th to have workshop format discussion with being led by Mr. Stewart. The intent of that one is in closed, which I think to some degree means that you're totally welcome to critique my management of that use of time and whatever. If I've gotten it wrong, then we can adjust. I just seem to recall There was only one time last year that I was really caught off guard by the length of the staff presentation, which was, I thought we thought it was going to be 20 minutes and the presentation was over an hour and a half that they wanted to put forward. There definitely are items that are complex enough that require a longer period of time, like when we were discussing the Port Property Tax Act and such. There are complex things, but that one didn't need to be. And I take that as my responsibility as the chair to have better managed that. But I don't think it happens very often. Second time speaker, and what I'm hoping, because the way the motion is actually worded right now, it's not clear about where that discussion should take place. And so it just says that we should discuss it. I don't know if it's meaning just tonight and come up with a recommendation, or whether it means offline at another time do it, but that's your call. Is this the discussion you were referring to?
Yes, your worship, if I could explain, the two options were that it be approved, and the other is that changes be discussed. So that it be discussed is not a motion, is not the relevant motion.
Right.
The motion will be, once the discussion finishes, the motion could be that, excuse me, that it be approved as amended, as agreed upon, or as initially proposed, or deferred to that opportunity you're speaking about, your worship, where it could be combined with a workshop discussion.
Option 2 should have said referred to another meeting for discussion, because obviously option 1, you can have the discussion and then approve something at the end of the night tonight. So, but it's back to you for a second time speaking.
In the discussion now. Yes.
I just want to say that I just want to reiterate that I feel that we could be doing things in the district in a more streamlined manner. This has been something that has been discussed since before the election. So I've been here almost a year now, and I'm not seeing any streamlining. I'm not seeing any quicker ways of doing things. And this was just my one suggestion, that perhaps we could move the people's business forward more quickly and more effectively if we have more regular council meetings. I understand the value of the workshops in some regards, but I think the getting actionable items in front of a council meeting is the way to move forward in a more effective fashion. And I think it's worth noting that the city of North Van doesn't do any workshops. The city doesn't do any workshops. So I'll leave that there. From what I've heard from everyone, I'd be very happy to pick up on Councillor Hanson's motion of deferring it and referring it back. That sounds reasonable to me, instead of doing it on the fly here. Obviously, that's not going to work. So,
motion on referral.
So can we just clarify the mover and seconder then? Perhaps moved by Councillor Hanson. Okay, thank you. And that is to that the 2024 council meeting schedule be deferred to a workshop. And I believe your worship will try to combine that with that discussion on
we already
workshop
have time
format.
set aside this month for it. So, okay, discussion on referral. Any? Seeing none, will somebody will I'm prepared to call the question. I'll do that.
I just did it 3 times.
Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. It would be really great if council members had particular ideas about what they wanted to see change. If they communicate that before the workshop, it makes it easier for us to come to a decision as well from that point. But
what format would I do that in?
We'll send all our comments to Mr. Stewart.
there you go. Done. Okay. Next item up for discussion is item 8.5. This is the Maplewood Fire and Rescue Center and Argyle Artificial Turf Field Loan Authorization Bylaw 8649/2023. This item is up for first, second, and third reading. And so initially I'm going to go to staff. Mr. Danock, do you have any opening comments on the matter? I need your microphone on. Now.
Thank you. Through your worship, council has already approved this funding through the financial plan bylaw. This loan authorization bylaw starts the process to secure the funding through the municipal finance authority next April, as required under the community charter. The bylaw was reviewed by the finance and audit committee in September, and the committee recommended that it be brought back to council for consideration.
I'll be moving staff recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Back. I have no further comments on the matter. Councillor Back, additional comments? Okay, we'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Okay, next item up for discussion is item 8.6. This is bylaws 8643, 8644, rezoning and development cost charge waiver for East Keith Road supportive housing project. And we're going to start off with a comment from Thames and Guppy, or sorry, Mr. Milburn, did you want additional comments first? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to confirm I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yes, excellent. Well, thank you, Your Worship, members of Council. The District of North Vancouver Housing Needs Report, updated by Council in July of this year, identifies the need for new supportive housing units in the district. These needs were affirmed by the Minister of Housing in their recent assessment of housing need, which is included later in tonight's agenda. In this challenging housing market, many of our residents currently find themselves without proper housing or care supports. The proposal before you tonight is intended to respond in a significant way to this need. If new supportive housing with care is not provided, those currently in need will still be living in the district, but without the levels of support proposed in the project, including staff on site providing 24/7 care. The land use decision before Council is based on the proposed use at the identified location on East Keith Road. The project partners, who will be introduced by Ms. Guppy shortly, have assessed the site and found that it meets their criteria to effectively deliver supportive housing and complex care services. District staff are recommending that this proposal be forwarded to a public hearing so that the community can be engaged in this important conversation. Thank you, Mayor Little, and Ms. Guppy is now available to provide a brief overview of the proposal, and we have a full complement of staff and partner representatives available to respond to questions.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Guppy.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, as mentioned, 1200 block East Keith Road, the supportive housing project. So before I get going, I just want to introduce our partners who are here in the audience. We have BC Housing, Luminative Housing Society, of course ourselves, and Vancouver Coastal Health. Well represented. You know many of them already, but they're here all evening, and together we'll be happy to answer questions you have this evening or make a full presentation at the public hearing in November. So moving on, a little bit about the site. And by the way, I only have a few slides and I'll be done in about 4.5 minutes. So won't be taking a lot of time this evening. Many of you know the site already. It just as a quick overview, this is the Trans-Canada Highway. We have Mountain Highway coming down the hill, East Keith Road. This is the former school site before the Mountain Highway was realigned. And this is the subject site. It's some properties right at the foot of the hill facing East Keith Road. And for reference, Keith Road and Lynmouth are the boundary with the city of North Vancouver. So this is Cityland, Lionsgate Studios, Business Park, and then district area over here with Carlton at the Club, the Winter Club, and of course, Lynn Creek running down to the side. So just turning, this is the same site now seen looking southwest. And really what I wanted to pick up here was just the right-of-way, the BC Hydro right-of-way that runs across the back of the site. And that's partly why the site is such a unique shape. So a little bit of background, as Dan mentioned, we've been thinking about housing and what our residents here in the district need for many years. And that's built right into our OCP and our targeted OCP and our rental housing policy. And one of the things that we, and in particular you, Council, have noted over the years is that we want to address those types of housing that are not met by the market. We can help facilitate those projects by providing land. And that's what we've done in other locations. And in particular, that's what we did for West 16th supportive housing, which is at the building permit stage right now. And we're about to launch a very similar process to the West 16th process for this one. So having said that, turning directly to the bylaws, we have two bylaws in front of us this evening. Bylaw 8643 is a rezoning bylaw to rezone the site to a comprehensive development zone 146, CD 146. And it's designed specifically to permit social and affordable housing, social and supportive housing, I should say, on the site in a form that's up to 6 stories in height and a density of up to 1.75 FSR. The second bylaw in front of us this evening is Bylaw 8644, and it's a development cost charge waiver specific to this site, which would mean that the future building permit for this site would not have to pay DCCs. I just want to take a little bit of time to just talk a little bit more about what the project may look and feel like. We're very early in the design stage. The architect team is on board, but those preliminary discussions are just taking shape. This project will go through a development permit process, so we will see the full designs as they unfold in coming months. But for this evening, I can tell you that in terms of a building footprint, this is the approximate size you're looking at. The architect is still exploring the type and shape of footprint, but what's showing here is a footprint that's nestled into the slope, and then taking advantage of that unopened road allowance to the rear for the access and parking. Also, as a reminder, this is a 65-unit project where every unit is a self-contained modest studio apartment. That means each resident will have their own safe space to call home. What's different about this building as compared to other apartment buildings is that as residents leave their private spaces, they get to be supported by communal spaces where there are 24/7 services provided. And those services include food services, meals, but also more importantly, a series of abilities to make connections, to build that network of friends and support, and people who can provide services to you so that if you need help, there's help provided. We've talked a lot in the past about the fact that as well as it being 65 units, 5 of those units are complex care housing units supported by Vancouver Coastal Health. The units themselves don't look very different. What's different is that for those 5 residents, as well as having the tenant support services that all of the residents have provided by LUMA Native Housing Society, they also have direct access to healthcare provided by Vancouver Coastal Health. Lastly, while we don't have drawings of this particular project yet, these are just some sample images of recent supportive housing projects around BC to give you a bit of a flavor of the bulky and massive of a building like this. So over the next month to 6 weeks, we'll be having a series of public input sessions. We'll have 2 virtual online sessions and an in-person open house on November 8th at the Holiday Inn. We will be reporting back on how these sessions unfold at the public hearing, which currently is tentatively scheduled for November 21st. See, I knew somewhere along the way my tongue was going to trip me up. And I think that's just about it.
So it doesn't actually say on the slide Holiday Inn, but you've now determined that that November 8th meeting will be at the Holiday Inn.
And it is in the information report that's coming your way with all the details. But yes, it is going to be at the Holiday Inn.
Okay, thank you.
And we're here if you have any questions.
Okay, the first speaker I have hand up, Councillor Hanson, do you have a recommendation?
Move the staff recommendation, the matter go to first reading and public hearing.
Thank you very much. Councillor Back, you second that? Thank you. Councillor Hanson, additional comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. I'm very pleased to support this matter going to first reading and public hearing. I wish to emphasize this is housing for the most in need residents in our community. And I believe it's important for the district to be playing a role by contributing district lands to this type of housing and to addressing these needs. So I look forward to this going forward, and I look forward to hearing the views of the community in public hearing.
Thank you very much. Councillor Back, seconded.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much, Ms. Guppy, for the presentation. We know that like so many other communities, the number of folks who are experiencing homelessness or who are at risk of becoming homeless is on the rise here in the District of North Vancouver. I was part of not the last homeless count, but the one before that. And while there's the visible homeless, there's there's also homeless folks who are who are underhoused, whether they're living in RVs. Sorry, I got a little bit distracted there. And we know that one of the most effective ways for us as a municipality to help these folks is to leverage land that the district owns by partnering with other organizations to build and operate the sort of housing that will help the most vulnerable in our community. So the supportive housing model is just that. It provides the support that our community's most vulnerable need by coupling stable housing with access to on-site services. And I look forward to getting to know Luma Native Housing Society better, who would be the operator. And again, this would be 65 self-contained suites, as your presentation highlighted, 5 of which would be complex care for those residents. So I think as councillors in the District of North Vancouver, it's incumbent upon us to do everything we can do to help this situation. And I'm pleased to support this by seconding the motion and referring this to a public hearing.
Thank you, Councillor Back. I'll assume from the hurried looks over there that our friend is back.
On what side of the room?
There's a
For adjourning.
teeny tiny mouse, we'll say, that's been going along the wall back and forth. And that's right. We'll put them in the speakers list and see what they have to say.
Kevin, is he on your side?
Your socks and be good. You're fine.
I don't
all
find
right.
this at all
The next
funny.
speaker I have is Councillor Pope. Get your microphone on here. Thank you.
Oh, as usual. Thank you very much. As Councillor Back has pointed out, homelessness is a growing problem in the District of North Van. I was also part of that homeless count a couple of years ago, but in 2020, there were 121 people were unhoused in the district. But I think we all know the numbers are much, much higher now in 2023 and growing. These numbers don't include like people in the RVs, people couch surfing, and also because of the skyrocketing cost of rents, I think we're on the verge of seeing, a real tsunami of people who find themselves homeless. In fact, in June, the Vancouver Sun ran a story with the headline that more than 100,000 BC households at risk of homelessness due to the rental crisis. So it all comes back to the affordable housing. I feel strongly that we must show leadership in taking care of our community and the less fortunate and the most vulnerable. And I fully support this project moving forward and moving it forward to public hearings. The thing is, if we allow the homeless problem to get worse, it not only affects the health and welfare of these people in our community who are less fortunate, it comes at a huge cost to society. The unhoused disproportionately fill up emergency rooms and medical centers, costing the healthcare system billions. The unhoused cost the justice system. And as we've seen in Vancouver, homeless camps can be dangerous for the people who live in them and a disaster to the neighborhood. They're also more susceptible to dying during heat waves. So this supportive housing development needs to be built as soon as possible, in my opinion, so that we can take care of the less fortunate and vulnerable in our community. And I want to thank the NDP government and the housing minister and BC Housing and Vancouver Coastal Health for providing this and partnering with us on this project and providing the funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I will just mention before carrying on, just again, the matter on the floor is to refer the matter to a public hearing where we will all have open minds and be amenable to persuasion, despite the fact that we obviously recognize needs in our community. It'll be about the debate about the suitability of the site. So keep an open mind. Councillor Hanson, you're next. Or you were already in the speaking list. So Councillor Murray, you're next.
Thank you very little. I'll support sending this to hearing.
But there's going to be a lot of questions in the community. We have gone down this road over 12 years ago. We rezoned a piece of property on 16th and Lloyd, and there is still no hole in the ground. The project was women-led families, very low income, and that project has still not even completed their building permit process. So it's the process for us was disappointing because we get a lot of pressure from the provincial government about what we're not doing. And when we do it and it doesn't happen and it's not in our control, some of us have a problem with that. I'm one of those people. So the questions that we had from the community in regards to that zoning was, and for these projects to be successful, the community needs to support them. And I think with the open house and the questions and the examples of LUMA in other parts of Greater Vancouver, hopefully that will be the success of this project for the local community. But their questions are going to be security, access, are there, and this was a big one that came out for Lloyd and 16th, was will there be drugs and alcohol on site? That was a big question that people didn't understand why we were looking at housing people with different levels of addiction and allowing the kind of addiction, the kind of products that would continue that addiction. So those kinds of questions, I don't know how well we did because there was a lot of pushback in the community during that public process. So I hope that we can use the success stories of LUMA to be able to describe how we take people in a place where they are not housed and struggling to a place of success. And, you know, the slides certainly presented that, but those are the kind of questions that are going to come out. Another question that's going to come out is what is security? What does that mean? We know right now we've got a facility on Lower Cap, and we need to understand, how this is looked after. We're dealing right now as municipalities and certainly communities across the country where we know that our police complements are declining. We've still got quite a number of people that want to be firefighters, but we don't have a lot of people that want to be police officers. And we just can't get to everybody right now. So how do we deal with challenges that arise? And does our local detachment, is that their responsibility? Those are some questions that are going to come up during this public meeting and during this hearing, I suspect. And then I guess the other thing that we didn't think about when we looked at the zoning on 16th and Lloyd was the kind of requirements that the district is going to ask of anybody building in the municipality. A lot of those issues have come and requirements have come from the provincial government, changing the building code, looking at the issue on 16th in regards to our water table. And that's been a challenge. Issues around hydro and where they are with applications. They are quite behind, I understand. And that has put some pressure on, I'll just use my second time, Mayor Little. Okay. That has put some pressure on the applicant, and maybe the applicant was not aware of some of these challenges that they were going to have. So I just want everybody to walk into this with their eyes wide open and maybe talk to Tamsin in the hallway and get her to show you the list of things that you'll have to tick off just from a building perspective on a bit of a slope in a gully, with a hill behind you. And because I think we were very disappointed when we went through this process on 16th and Lloyd, and 12 years later, we still don't have a building and people still don't have a home. So there's a lot of challenges that we need to face with our eyes wide open and head on. And but I'm happy to send this to hearing and to let the community come out, and hopefully at that public meeting is where we can deal with a lot of these questions and show those success stories, because it's only going to be as successful as the community that will support it.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Murray. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I'm also supportive of this going to first reading and going to public hearing. Having worked at BC Housing, I appreciate the need that's in the community, and that need is growing. If this does go ahead, I echo Councillor Murray's comments about 16th and Lloyd. Tamsin, you brought it up, so I just want to touch on that. If it does go ahead, I hope there's a sense of urgency to get it done. I am glad to see Vanessa on this file, so that's great. I understand the district has a role to play when we partner with senior levels of government, and that's usually the provision of district-owned land. One thing that I never really asked before when I was at BC Housing, when a municipality waives DCCs, how's that made up? Like it's significant, you know, getting there 700,000. So I was just wondering through your worship, if we can ask, you know, do we pull that from reserve, or like, how do we cover that?
It tends to come off the tax levy in one form or another because it represents works that have to be done for the project anyway. So you are relieving it from the applicant, but it is being made up on our budget.
But we also get the benefit of having.
Is that fair, Tamsin? And
Well,
Yeah.
we can definitely speak to where the money comes from. But the one thing I would point out on a project like this, at least, development cost charges are the municipality's way of making up for the cost of the future impact of those residents. And they have components: parks, sewer, water, and streets. But with this project, the impact on our streets will be much, much less, because this isn't a project where everybody's going to be driving a lot. So while we still have to make up that downfall, it isn't going to have the same economic impact that other projects might have.
adjacent to an already brand new intersection, so it's unlikely to trigger additional change. Mr. Milburn, additional comments?
Your worship, just to echo your comments, it is covered, and I believe Mr. Danielek is in council chambers tonight, could speak to this in detail, but it is covered through the tax levy, then flowed through the housing reserve, and then the housing reserve then makes the development cost charge reserve whole, and this ensures that we have appropriate funds necessary to cover those costs, and also is our part of our contribution under the BC Housing Memorandum of Understanding that we worked out with BC Housing in 2018. Thank you, worship.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments? Okay, back to you. Okay, thank you very much. My own comments on the matter, I think I was quoted in the newspaper talking about this one already. I absolutely recognize the need for this type of housing in our community, and I absolutely recognize the insufficiency of the current housing project over in Travelodge, which is the comparator for this, because theoretically we can't close the Travelodge site until we find a suitable alternative to be able to move people in there. And the challenge is the Travelodge site is completely insufficient. It's not only are they very old units and the site is not laid out for this particular purpose, the site layout is so permeable that there's no way staff could really keep tabs on what's going on in that space, because every single unit has an exterior entrance because it's an old motor hotel. And so it's not designed for it. Good building design can help manage a lot of the risks that this kind of housing could present in the community. I hope that's a big part of the discussion that we have in the public hearing. The other piece is what was raised by the member of the public here today about what role the society has in supporting the RCMP and what they need to get done in our community. I have a bit of a challenge with that issue. I mean, if I rent out my house and someone in my house is up to some things in the neighborhood and the RCMP comes and talks to me about it, I feel like I'm aiding and abetting if I'm not actually taking an active stance and saying what's going on and what we can do to address it and try to work to relieve it. And so I do think that there is an onus on the part of the operator of the facility to be working with our first responders in the community to try to reduce the likelihood of negative spillovers into neighboring spaces, but also for the health benefits of the people who are living in this space. If you're in one unit, you don't want to be dominated by somebody in one of the other units either. It negatively impacts you. Not only does it negatively impact the neighborhood around, negatively impacts the other people even more acutely within that housing. And so as we go through this process, those are the kinds of questions I'm looking to have answered. And but I'll be happy to support the motion laid out here this evening and look forward to the matter coming to public hearing. I see no further speakers at this time. Prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Just checking in with the clerk. So just to be clear, we had a date in mind. Wondering if you can tell people when this matter will be referred to a public hearing.
Yes, Your Worship. The excuse me. The date for the public hearing is to be Tuesday, November 21st, 7 p.m. here in the council chambers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. Okay, on to the next item this evening. This is item 8.7. This is bylaws 8645, 8646, 8647, OCP amendment, rezoning and development cost charges waiver for future social housing development at Lillooet West. Opening comments, Mr. Milburn.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council. This application is different than the previous one. It is for social housing, which is housing at various affordability levels as defined by BC Housing under the Community Housing Fund. So this site is proposed to be brought forward and rezoned in anticipation of a successful grant application. And Ms. Guppy has some very brief introductory comments, and then staff would be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, welcome, Ms. Guppy.
Thank you, and thank you, Dan. Okay, so this one is also even shorter than the last one. Again, this site is just up the hill from the Holiday Inn at the intersection of Lillooet Road and Old Lillooet Road. So just a little bit on the context. We're a couple blocks away from Lenmore Elementary School. We're about a block up the hill from the Superstore, and we have good transit service in part due to CAPU's UPass program. So we've got a transit stop right adjacent to the site, on both sides of the street. The site is approximately 2.4 acres in size, and the neighborhood is a mix of townhouses and low-rise apartments. Again, the background, much as we saw on the last slide, we have a history of supporting this kind of project. And two recent examples are Delbrook, which is just breaking ground down the street, and the Salal Apartments next to Phibbs Exchange, which this is a fairly recent photo of about a couple weeks ago. So turning to the three bylaws before us this evening, Bylaw 8645 is an official community plan amendment, and it would redesignate the entire portion of land shown in red for housing level 5, residential level 5 that is, which is a density of 1.75 and allows up to 6 stories. And that, by the way, is very similar to the existing density of the CRMU 1 that's on the site, but allows it to be predominantly residential. The second bylaw before us is Bylaw 8646, which is a rezoning bylaw. This would rezone the site from the interim industrial zone through to comprehensive development zone 146. Again, that's to permit something that's up to 6 stories in height, up to a density of 1.75, and again, for social and supportive housing. The third bylaw, much as we saw on the last item, is also a development cost charge waiver bylaw. And for this site, it is a site-specific one again, and really not much more to that. We don't have any drawings at all for this site, no architects involved, because we don't have a project yet. This is about putting together the regulations to permit a future application so that we can apply later this year, in fact, in mid-November, for funding with the hope of getting that community housing fund monies. But to give you a sense of just the kind of bulk and massing, the image on the left is of a similar social housing project in Vancouver. Gives you a sense of what a up to 6 stories can look like. And the blue box is very clunky, I know, really just to give you a sense that we'd be building towards the north end of the site, which is more open, fewer trees, less slope, gives you a little bit of sense of the footprint of the buildings themselves. Not saying it would look at all like that, but rather just give the impression of the site. For this one, we are starting the virtual public meeting this week, running through to the 18th of October. We have an in-person public open house at the Holiday Inn on October 11th, and we'll be reporting back again to Council on the results of that public process. At the public hearing, we'll be giving you a more detailed presentation, and the public hearing is tentatively set for later this month on October 24th. And again, I'm here if there are any questions, but thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll be moving to staff recommendation. Councillor Back, are you seconding the matter? Yeah, thank you very much. Just my own comments on this. I mean, I get it may seem a little bit strange to have this development not have an identified partner yet. And I just wanted to speak to that. We found a number of years ago that it was a real challenge when you would have an identified group come forward. They wanted to talk about the really good things they do with their particular society, whether it's supporting seniors or persons with disabilities, or the really great things that they could be doing in the community. But the community needed to have the discussion about access, egress, form, massing, and all of the issues about impact on the neighboring sites. And so what this allows when the district is the applicant on district land is it allows us to have that technical discussion about the building and the massing and the potential impacts on the neighboring areas. And then at a future time when a proponent is identified, then you're really talking about services and the appropriateness of those particular services on the site. And so I'm supportive of this approach. I think that we need to take a leadership position on the lands that are within our own portfolio, and this represents us doing that. So I will be supportive. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for highlighting why it is important that we take a leadership role in pre-zoning. It's a competitive process when we're talking about the Community Housing Fund, and in order to put ourselves in the best possible position to be selected for a project that would be funded by the Community Housing Fund, it's important that we take this approach. I don't have too much in the way of a comment. I think we recognize the need for this type of housing, and the fact that it's family-oriented housing in this neighborhood, I think does make a lot of sense. I think there will be questions around the access and egress once we get further along, but I think at this stage in the process, I'm glad to see that we've reached this point where we're actually considering first reading, and I hope that we will be sending it to public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, followed by Councillor Murray. Councillor Hanson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to support this going to first reading and public hearing. I have previously, indeed, through my full years on council, advocated the use of district lands as a vehicle to provide social housing, affordable rental housing. This type of housing is badly needed in our community. It was badly needed when I first raised the subject in 2014, but it's much more badly needed now. I believe this to be a suitable site for the type of housing that's under discussion. I walked the site recently, and I do hope that we're able to preserve some of the tree cover. There are some trees on the property that are worthy of consideration, and I do hope the design incorporates that protection to some degree. And with that said, I do look forward to this matter going to public hearing.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Murray.
So I did raise this, and I'm going to raise it again tonight, but I note in my calendar I have 3 public hearings that have been identified as Lillooet, Keith Road, and Ridgewood. And they were in prior to this council meeting. So I have to say, I find that a little presumptuous when the dates are already fulfilled with the name of the public hearing, as opposed to filling them tomorrow after we make a decision, because there's no guarantee that we would send any of these items to public hearing. But they have been put in with their names. And I did bring this up a couple of weeks ago because I noticed in my calendar that Lillooet was already identified as on a hearing, but we hadn't even got to the meeting yet. So maybe we could talk to staff about that, just not to presume the outcome of a council meeting.
If I may, I've thought about this, and I think particularly when they're happening within the next 4, 5, 6 weeks, it's important to get them in the calendar.
Well, you can put public hearing in the calendar. I have no problem doing that.
We leave the address
Yeah,
off
that's-
on it to
that's
show
the
that it's still to be contemplated by the council. But I mean, the main thing is I know you all have family life
Sorry,
issues.
the mayor's
and
talking, so we're gonna need to start my clock again because I just made that comment and I didn't want, like, if you're gonna explain, that's great, but they have to stop my clock.
Yeah, we'll make sure that.
So I just don't think that's very appropriate to do it that way. I think it's better to just put a placeholder of a hearing
That's
on
fair.
all 3 of those days, but not identify anything until the next day after the council meeting's done and we've given direction. Right?
That's fair.
Yeah. So I am a little bit concerned about the fact that, and I get why we're doing this, but I have a concern about the density, the access. This site is on a slope, a significant slope, a sheared slope that runs down to the Holiday Inn, a well-treed slope, and we're using treed land in 3 projects. And, we can manage around that. But I do have a concern about the density on this one and the access. The access to this site is at the crest of a hill on both sides. So Lillooet Road and Premier that runs up on the other side from the Holiday Inn are 2 vertical inclines that you crest at a T, which is Premier going into the townhouses off Lillooet Road. And it's a challenging site to get out of right now because it's blind when you're turning left out of Premier Street onto Lillooet Road because traffic comes up from the Holiday Inn. There's only one way in and out of this neighborhood now. There used to be 2, but when the highway interchange was redeveloped, they cut one of the access points off. So you've got a significant amount of transportation, vehicles, a school and the Holiday Inn going into this neighborhood. Plus, currently, we also have fire trucks going in there because it's where our fire training center is. So I just think it's a really dense project for this very small site that sits at the top of the crest of a hill from an access point. And I don't feel comfortable not knowing what this is going to look like. I've looked at a couple of other projects, like the one that you pointed out down by Phibbs Exchange. It's 90 units. This could be double that one next to Phibbs Exchange. A couple of the other projects, like the one that we're looking at, 1.75 FSR on Keith Road is 65 units. Granted, the property is not as big as this one, but it's also not as discounted because of the slope. So the setbacks would be larger. So I'm not sure that I ever expected this site to hold that kind of density. I thought it would be something smaller that would fit in more with sort of the surrounding densities. And I just find this density to be a bit big on this particular site.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments on the matter? Councillor Pope?
Thank you, Mayor Little. I am very much in support. Sorry, pardon me. I'm very much in support of this recommendation. And I'm very pleased to see this project for social housing. We are in a housing crisis. We know it. We desperately need affordable housing in the district of North Vancouver. I'm so pleased to see the 20% deep subsidy for residential units with less than 2 bedrooms. And I'm 50% of units at rent geared to income and 30% of units at an affordable market rate. Hopefully this will be just a small step in helping the people who live here who can't afford to buy expensive stratas, the young people who've been forced out of our community because they can't afford to rent here. And of course, many other people who are affected, families, so many people who are affected by the housing crisis. including workers on the North Shore that we have a labor shortage of. So I totally support it, and I just, those are my comments.
Thank you. I too will support first reading and it going to public hearing. I noticed the community housing fund is targeted towards families and seniors, so that's a really important segment. And these are rental units, as Councillor Pope mentioned. You know, there's 3 different levels of affordability, so that's great. We do need places for workers on the North Shore to live. I also do recognize the concern that Councillor Murray brought up. Like, this area is going to be busier, so traffic planning will have to be, you know, a big part of this. We have increased units on Cap U. We have improvements going into Inter-River. So, you know, this area is going to see some development, but we just have to make sure that the traffic is planned well. But I look forward to hearing comments from the public at the public hearing. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, I see no further speakers. I'm prepared to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, and Council, we're up at about 9 o'clock. We normally will take a bit of a stretch break. We have enough items left that there's still enough to do after the meeting. So I think I'd be recommending a 2 or 3 minute stretch, as my friend says, that sitting is the new smoking. So get up, have a stretch, have a bio break, and we'll be back in about 3 or 4 minutes. All right, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. All right, Council, next item up for discussion is item 8.8. This is bylaws 8628, 8629, OCP amendment and rezoning bylaws for the 32-unit townhouse development at 1031 to 1045 Ridgewood Drive. The recommendation is for first referral, bunch of stuff. Mr. Milburn, opening comments? Oh, sorry, that's right. I do have Dean Johnson signed up to speak. And just want to be clear, you are the applicant for the project. You're welcome to speak. You have 3 minutes to address the council. Come on up.
That was actually a good, interesting
It's
conversation.
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, yeah.
Councillor, it's Tuesday.
We lost today somewhere.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Dean Johnson, Vice President of Development at West Group Properties. On behalf of West Group, we're enthusiastic to present a proposal on Ridgewood Drive for your consideration of first reading tonight, which represents our first application in the District of North Vancouver. West Group Properties is a locally owned real estate development company based in Vancouver with a legacy of over 60 years of community development. We take great pride in our reputation as a community builder and our active participation in a wide range of residential, commercial, and mixed-use projects across the Lower Mainland. As you know, this is the second time the property has been brought before council. In 2017, the proposal was brought by Bothwell Properties and was approved at public hearing and subsequently rescinded at fourth reading by the incoming council in late 2018. In recent years, since assuming ownership and management of the project, we've actively engaged with the community groups and stakeholders, carefully considering and taking steps to address prior concerns raised by council and also current council considerations. This effort includes introducing family-sized units, which fosters the expansion of options for young families within the community and supports local businesses with vibrancy and customers. Since 2019, construction activity has notably subsided, primarily due to the completion of significant projects in the vicinity of Edgemont Village. To mitigate any potential disruptions during construction, we have developed a comprehensive traffic management plan in consultation with both staff and community. This plan draws upon past experiences and aims to minimize the impact of construction activities. The project seeks to improve 4 properties presently occupied by aging single-family homes by introducing 32 32 family-oriented residences considering entirely of 2 and 3 bedroom homes. As single detached homes have become increasingly unaffordable, yet represent a large portion of housing stock in the district, families are increasingly looking for alternative options to grow within the community. Townhomes represent an accessible option that appeals to a wide range of potential buyers, including families, those who are looking to upsize, young professionals, and individuals looking to downsize as they age. Furthermore, the design includes 4 ground access flats off the courtyard, ensuring accessibility for all residents of those homes. As a whole, the proposal is in compliance with the requirements of Edgemont Village Plan, and after a lengthy design reviews process with staff and the community. Should that be noted that while the policy does not necessitate the inclusion of subsidized housing, we have explored the possibility of incorporating such housing onto the site, as per Council's request. We acknowledge the significance of affordable housing within the broader community, a cause West Group actively supports, having collaborated with various levels of government to implement in other regions. As one of Western Canada's largest recipients of CMHC funding with our CFI program, we have a proven track record in this regard and understand the challenging economic realities. Unfortunately, there are no viable programs at this scale to facilitate subsidized housing on this project. Nevertheless, in response to community and council input, we have made adjustments to ensure the project is more attainable in terms of its size and accessibility as previously noted. Just one final point, if you mind me wrapping up.
If you could draw to a close, that'd be great.
Yeah, that sounds great. My apologies. Generally, we're eager to see this project proceed to public hearing. We firmly believe that the proposal presenting today aligns with the neighborhood's aesthetics and spirit, addresses the housing need in the market by offering attainable and highly desirable homes. And we're enthusiastic about the conversation tonight and hopefully a public hearing upcoming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Milburn, opening comments on the matter?
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to note that Manager of Development Planning, Yan Zhang, has some brief introductory comments, after which staff would be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Your Worship.
Over to Yan Zhang, welcome.
Your Worship and members of council. Staff would like to make a brief overview of this application. West Group Properties has applied to redevelop the 4 existing single-family lots as 32 owned strata townhouse units. Can we have the, I just want to pull out the image on the screen here. The proposal requires OCP amendments as well as rezoning.
To be clear, I don't see an image on the screen. Was that intended?
In process, sorry. You didn't share your screen? Yeah, it's just it's a cover image.
There we go.
Yeah. Thank you.
And if you could start, there you go.
And so the site is located at the southeast corner of Ridgewood Drive and Air Avenue in the Adjournment Village residential peripheral area, to the east of the Grosvenor's mixed-use development, to the north of the Amica Seniors Living. The existing official community plan designated the site as RES2, which reflects the site's existing single-family use. However, the Edgemont Village Center Plan, adopted by Council in 2014, envisioned redevelopment of the site as townhouses up to 3-story in height, as reflected in this proposal before you tonight. As was also envisioned in the Adjournment Plan, OCP amendment is proposed to amend the site designation to RES4, transitional multifamily in alignment with the townhouse form. In addition to the OCP amendment, rezoning bylaw 8629 would rezone the property to a new CD zone, CD 145, to accommodate the proposal and regulate development of the site, including density, which is proposed at 1.8 FSR, height, setbacks, and parking. The CD 145 zone also secure a community amenity contribution of just over $772,000, which council may choose to direct towards affordable housing, park and trail improvement, public art, and other public realm infrastructure improvements in and around the neighborhood to benefit the community. As mentioned by the applicant, the proposal includes 32 owned townhouse units, These are a mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms ranging from 900 to 1,500 square feet in size, and also includes 4 one-story enhanced accessible units. The proposal would then provide a mix of home ownership options within the village center suitable for families and seniors looking to downsize in the community, also known as a missing middle housing. In accordance with the Strata Property Act, owners are also eligible to rent their units, and rental may not be restricted by the future strata. Worthy of note is the project is designed to passive house standard, which is providing a high level of energy efficiency and exceeds the STEP code. The application also includes a number of off-site improvements, including new sidewalks, lighting, boulevard planting, paving improvements, and utility service upgrades estimated at approximately 1.7 million. As mentioned, the site is occupied by 4 existing single-family houses. All 4 are rented. Because the residential tenant relocation assistance policy applies only to 5 or more existing units, so that policy doesn't really apply. However, the owner, the applicant, is voluntarily exceeding the Residential Tenancy Act tenants notice requirement and has been keeping tenants up to date regarding the development application. So overall, staff have assessed the proposal against council adopted policies and bylaws and found the proposal generally supportable. The 2 bylaws in front of you tonight are recommended for first reading and referral to a public hearing so that council would be able to hear directly from the public on this proposal. We are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I see Councillors Back and Hanson. Councillor Back, do you have a motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I will be moving the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson, are you seconding the
I'll
matter?
second it.
Thank you. Councillor Back, your comments on the matter?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think back to 2018, this was actually this particular site in the previous application that came forward was one of the first votes of the 2018 council. And I was one of the members of council at that time who supported the previous application on this site, which was rejected. But this project, like the previous version, does have a lot of support from the community, as we heard tonight from the speakers, including from the many Edgemont Village residents who played a role in the creation of the Edgemont Village Center Plan in 2014, which was adopted and supports exactly this type of housing in this location. It's also well supported by the local businesses. We heard an example of that from one of the speakers tonight as well. So fast forward 5 years from the previous application to what we're considering tonight and what's changed. Well, we are still going to see a form of housing that's going to offer some diversity and more affordable form of housing than the single family homes in the area. But they're going to cost more than they did 5 years ago. So there is cost to delay that I think I wanted to highlight. We had 25 3-bedroom units, and in the current proposal, there are now 12 2-bedroom units in addition to 20 3-bedroom units, so 32 homes. And of note has been highlighted that 4 of which will be fully accessible units. So I remain supportive. I think this is an even better project from what we saw previously from the previous application. I'm really excited by the fact that this project's been designed to meet passive house standards. And I think it will be a great addition to this part of the community. I would like to hear from the applicant around the 4 existing tenants. I know that it doesn't trigger the residential tenant relocation policy, given that it's not 5, but I'd like to know a little bit more about how those tenants are being looked after. But I am very supportive of seeing this project go to public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm pleased to support this application going to first reading and public hearing at this time. As has been mentioned, this is a very similar project to one that was rejected on adoption by the council that was elected in 2018. I would like to highlight the fact that from my point of view, there's a very different environment now in the Edgemont area compared to 2018. At that time, there was a lot of building going on. The phrase development fatigue was on everyone's lips in relation to this and other projects in the Edgemont area. I believe the public may now be significantly more supportive. With respect to the proposal itself, I'm under no illusions. There's no, from my point of view, no affordability in this project. The strata units are going to be extremely expensive. If they're go out for rental, the rents will be very high. I do note that there's $772,000 put forward in community amenity contributions, which will have to be our consolation prize with respect to affordability if that's directed towards affordable housing. But overall, given what has transpired and where we're at, given the state of the site and the history of this proposal, I do look forward to going to public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I too will support this going to public hearing. But if I can pose a question first to staff through your worship. It talks about, let me see, the enhanced accessible units. What makes them enhanced?
Ms. Norden,
Through your worship, yes, the district has an
microphone, please.
Oh, through your worship, thank you for the question. The district has an accessible design policy that lays out basic and accessible design features. Enhanced units better accommodate people with mobility issues and wheelchairs, are typically intended to be one level, have greater turning radius, adaptability for things like grab bars in the bathroom. So there's 4 enhanced accessible units proposed in this development that have direct at-grade access from the courtyard. And they're 2-bedroom units that fulfill all of the enhanced accessible guidelines in the district's policy.
It also includes accessibility to the shower to use a mobility device in there and also onto the deck space. Usually decks have a sill, and I believe they're modified to accommodate a person in a wheeled mobility device to get in and out of those spaces as well.
Yeah. I also share Councillor Back's comment about although the applicant may not be obligated to deal with the existing tenants. I did drive by there earlier today, and if there's anything that can be done in addition to just giving a little more notice, if there's any assistance that you feel you can do beyond the requirements, that would probably be something that's be positive. Okay.
Thank you very much. Just my own comments on it before Councillor Hanson, you're preparing to speak a second time?
No.
Oh, okay. Just my own comments on it. I think Councillor Hanson, you definitely nailed the issue that there definitely was a series of major construction developments that occurred in the village at the time, and people, in my view, were looking for some relief. We're still wrestling with this issue of how this is going to actually contribute to affordability in the community, because they are still going to be very expensive per door. But that's very hard to get away from, because simply put, this is a very desirable neighborhood with high levels of service within a short distance. I think you can be at the grocery store in about 20 seconds if you want to be from the corner of this property. And so it's a very highly served spot. It would be very hard to achieve affordable prices without a significant public contribution to it. So I'm amenable to what they've presented here. I think generally the form and massing being proposed is very similar to the projects to the west. And so I look forward to this matter being referred to a public hearing and look forward to hearing the comments of the public at that time, but I'll be supportive of the project. Support of a first reading and referring the matter to a public hearing.
With an open mind.
Absolutely open mind. Amenable to persuasion is my legal requirement. Councillor Murray, your comments.
I was going to reflect on the previous discussion we had in regards to the Keith Road site, that it's as successful as the community around it. And when this application was first brought to council in adoption at the new council, the previous council didn't finish the work. This community was not supportive of it. They were not supportive of any more development in Edgemont. And I think it's a real lesson for the municipality, but for staff to also understand that these applications, how they impact the community so considerably. And their businesses were struggling in Edgemont at that time. We met during that election with all of the businesses in the village who were, one after another saying, we're losing customers can't get to us. There's one project on every street corner. It's not sustainable. And yet it was, the train kept going and going and going. I think the other mistake too was that in some municipalities, I guess once a public hearing is finished and it comes back to council for debate, that's it. It wasn't understood that adoption is adoption. There's four steps to this process. And so we had the right to be able to defeat that previous project. But as Councillor Hanson points out, it's a different environment. And settle down, Councillor Pope. And you have to have support from your local community and your local businesses and the people around you to be successful in any of these applications for them to work. So the time is different. And yeah, we'll see what people have to say at the hearing.
Okay, Council, I see no further speakers on the issue. Prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item up for discussion is item 8.9. This is the housing targets update. And I'm going to looking to Mr. Milburn for opening comments on the matter. Let's get a sense for that. But first we have to clear the slide deck from the previous presentation before we can see. There. Mr. Milburn, do you have a very brief introduction?
Just a couple sentences, Your Worship, no presentation.
Well done.
Excellent. Your Worship, as noted in the report, Council recently received housing target order from the Ministry of Housing. There is a reporting requirement within the information. I just wanted to highlight a couple things. So we provided feedback to the ministry indicating that there are significant issues that are outside of municipal control, and those issues need to be considered as the province evaluates progress towards targets. These are things like market conditions. Additionally, there is significant investment from the province and federal government needed in order to support the development of supportive and social housing, as well as infrastructure in the community. And I think a key consideration, as there is some public debate about this, is council retains flexibility to make decisions on a case-by-case basis based on the community's needs. This target order does not change that fact. And so that future discretion is not affected. And certainly council can exceed these minimum standards if council wants to approve additional supportive and social housing projects. This order would not impact that in any way. As council can see from the attachment 3, there are significant applications of various types that are currently in process for council to consider. So council has options and retains that authority. Thank you, Your Worship. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. I'll be moving receipt. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Murray. Just some initial comments on it. I've had quite a number of comments already in the media about this particular issue. While I'm definitely in support of working towards these goals and have been supportive of it. I still have some challenge with the province severing this from discussions about infrastructure and transit investment in particular for our community. I have a real big challenge with accelerating housing construction without building the infrastructure that needs to go with it. And so I found those discussions with the provincial government to be challenging. They keep pointing to the Housing Accelerator Fund as a potential source to help us make these units more affordable. And again, I'm struggling with that because if you max out the Housing Accelerator Fund from federal government, it only amounts to $9 million over 3,000 additional units, so about $3,000 a door. Well, there's no way you can achieve affordability at $3,000 a door. And so I'm at a bit of a loss on that. I know we can meet the gross target that is in this, which is the only part that's actually been translated into the order itself. But there is implied in the presentation materials that they want us to achieve a very high ratio of non-market units. In fact, about very close to 1-to-1. And I don't see how we can reasonably do that if our only source of funding that gets tied to this is $3,000 a door. Then all we're doing is we're in a situation where housing was a federal responsibility, then it was a provincial responsibility, and now it is a municipal responsibility. And as we've seen with the last 3 presentations that we discussed tonight, and the willingness on the council is definitely there to support those projects, but we have to make a massive investment into that housing to make that happen. Contributions of land, contributions of DCC and staff time, and yet in other municipalities, I see the provincial government buying land. I see the provincial government paying for projects to be built. So I am frustrated with the level of support on this. I do think the goals that they've come up with are generally achievable, with the exception of the 1-to-1 ratio of non-market units. We're definitely going to need to sit down with the provincial and federal government to address that housing affordability piece. And at the same time, I'm still not giving up on this one, to talk about the inextricable link between transportation infrastructure and housing. You can't just be producing housing. You can't just be producing transportation infrastructure. They go together. And so I will express again my frustration on this issue, but I thank the provincial government for sitting down and working with us over the summer to try to see how this could work for us. I still think that we need to have further discussions about additional resources being put into all of the other things we need in the community. But I'll be supportive of receiving this report. Is there a second? Who is the seconder on that? Councillor Murray, your comments, please.
I share all of your comments, Mayor Little. And when we talk about infrastructure, because we face it every single day, we go to that bridge and the challenge of getting over that bridge. But infrastructure is so much more, and you know it is so much more than transportation. It's schools, it's hospitals, it's the resources to be able to fill those facilities. The deficit right now of schools in Surrey is mind-blowing. One of the fastest growing parts of the province, and the lack of schools even being built to be able to accommodate the number of kids in those communities is you know, an unbelievable challenge that I don't believe they're going to be able to deal with. Portables are the solution to the problem right now, and thousands are being brought in. Hospitals, and we talked earlier when we were talking about Keith Road, just about you know, the RCMP. We have a decline in the number of people that are applying to be police officers across this country. So, you know, Mr. Joyce, you'll talk about infrastructure in the ground, pipes, water, sewer, the spreading out of that infrastructure when, you know, 20 years ago, we started talking about densifying, no longer sprawling throughout the region. Now we want to densify, and now we are going back to almost a sprawl concept within single family neighborhoods to add more units to single family properties, which is going to require more infrastructure service in the ground. So I think it's, you know, this whole thing, you know, sort of being targeted. It's interesting that we're targeted with Burnaby. One of the highest developing municipalities in British Columbia as well is somehow on a list with some other municipalities that geographically are far more challenged than Burnaby, although they are on a hill as well. But they're spread out further. So I think this whole sort of you know, process that we've gone through was much to do about nothing as far as the numbers. We are on track with the work that we've done. I share a lot of your concerns. I think this is a government trying to fix a problem that really is not fixable. We have made our bed and now we have to lie in it. And I would like to just merely focus these numbers on the kind of social housing that we need instead of mixing it in with market, because we have done so much market in the municipality, and most of the municipalities have focused on market, and yet they are still interested in focusing on market too, which I find challenging to understand. I think ultimately the market will take care of itself. I think the cost of building is, you know, it's very difficult, and we look at our project down on 16th and Lloyd, and we can't even build that. So I'm not sure what the future looks like. It's a sad state. Kelly Bond's in the audience, and she's been a tireless advocate. We still see displacement of people. We have not, the housing that replaced her very affordable, sustainable complex that she lived in Lynn Valley, Emery, it is still not complete. It is, you know, going to be very challenging to any of the people that lived at Emery to be able to afford to go back into that complex. And many of those people have moved away and they could never afford to even move back, even if they wanted to. So many big issues on the forefront, and none of it's easy to solve. And we were once, I think, in the region, we were a very sustainable part of this country. And I think now we are one of the most unsustainable places in the country. And I don't see that getting better. I see that getting worse.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillors Back, Ma, and Hanson. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to make a brief comment and speak about this in a little bit more of a positive light than perhaps we've heard around the table so far. I really see this as an opportunity to work with the province. I see this as an opportunity to collaborate, and I think the only way we're going to get close to solving any of these challenges is to work together, whether that's with the province, and as has been discussed, you know, schools and hospitals are all, you know, things that we're going to require in addition to housing, but housing is really at the root of some of our most pressing issues that our community faces right now. We've got a target that I think has been highlighted is one that we can achieve. And so I'm looking forward to continued conversations with the province and how we can partner and get the housing that we need built. I know that our staff have had good conversations with the province. We had a good meeting with the minister during the UBCM conference. I thought the minister and his staff were very receptive to some of the points that we made, and I look forward to working with them around some of those challenges that we may have. But I don't see this as a problem that is not fixable. I see this as the province trying to do something, and there's a lot more coming down the pipe. So I think we need to be prepared for more change. And I think the best attitude that we can take is one of wanting to collaborate and work together. And that's, I think that's the best way to move forward, but supportive of the target. And I do think it is one that we will achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Ma.
You know, it's a good discussion going around the room. You know, I still have some concerns and questions, but similar to Councillor Back, I think there's been a very positive attitude that we and feedback that we heard from the staff in terms of discussions with the ministry. So, you know, I'm going to trust that the staff will be able to work out the details and protect the interests of the district. I also think this is an important signal to the provincial government that we're a willing and able partner to facilitate affordable housing in the district. But I do support the mayor's efforts to tie in funding for infrastructure. So I will support you on that. Just from a practical perspective, if I can ask the question, I'm just trying to understand how these targets may or may not influence how we look at proposals. I know these are minimums, but if we get to a point where we have sufficiently met a certain category, do you envision us looking for proposals for the other categories? I'm just wondering, how does this impact us from a practical perspective? If I can direct that at Dan.
Mr. Milburn.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I think that question was part of the reason why I included the attachment 3, as I think that might be a useful example of the types of range of applications that we currently have in process that will come before council for consideration. What we anticipate doing is, as those reports come forward, we'll identify to council how they're leading towards achieving the targets identified. And then council can, of course, continue to make a decision based on their discretion to decide whether or not that's fulfilling their objective. I think the province and us recognize that there are many types of housing that we don't control. It's up to the market and market demand. So we'll be responsive to those applications, which is why the province anticipates the review of targets to be 2 steps. First step is the threshold met? And if it's not, then the question is it because simply the market isn't bringing forward those types of proposals or some other reason that can be explained? And I think there's an acknowledgement that while we are definitely involved in partnerships, especially for supportive and social housing, for market-based housing, we're not leading the way in that case, the market is. So in answer to the question specifically, you were saying, could we court development of a certain type? And I think in a way, the official community plan and the village and town center plans identify and express an intention to the marketplace that the market responds to. So as long as we're clear and have straightforward application processes to consider applications and ensure that they're consistent with those standards, we will inevitably get interest. There is demand for housing in the marketplace.
I just want to be clear about one thing, though. If you look at Schedule A of the, so this is page 17 of their portion of the report, which I think our actual number is more like 272 or something like that. The order is actually only around this, the gross numbers of units. And so the order is not actually on the mix of units. Is that correct, Mr. Milburn?
That is currently correct. I would anticipate that the order will be modified in the future. That would, of course, have to involve additional consultation with local governments. But we do anticipate that a revised order could be provided in the future that would include those specific guidance. So changing the guidance to an order. That's what we do anticipate.
So
but at this time, you're correct. At this time, you're currently correct that the order is only the total number of units.
He has an out.
Currently correct is what we're looking for here. That's fine. But all that to say that if you meet the gross housing target, there is currently no requirement to meet the mix. That is optional guidance. But the challenge is that's obviously the target of the program, particularly where the order that we've been given, the backgrounder is focused on not us producing a tremendously high number of units, but us producing a high ratio of non-market and mixed unit sizes. And this was one, so the provincial government, when they came and talked to us, they talked about potentially municipalities fitting really into 3 buckets. Some that just have to produce units, some that are more modest in production units, and some that they're looking for something a little more specialized. And we fell into that bucket where they were trying to get a high ratio of non-market, a high mix of the types of units in it. But the order, as Mr. Milburn has said, currently is around the gross units only.
And I have a follow-up question, please.
If I may. Go ahead, Councillor.
I lost an email, so I apologize. In terms of, once again, the practical, at what point do we start counting? I believe I read somewhere any projects that are kind of like in stream right now that haven't been built yet will be counted towards our goal. Is that correct, or did I misread that?
The calculation, when does it take place? It's at the completion of a unit, correct, Mr. Milburn?
That's
Occupancy?
correct. It's at occupancy, which given the typical timelines for construction being 18 months to 2.5 years, for the first couple years anyway, the counting will be done of applications that had been approved by council some time ago and have been under construction. So we will only be providing information on occupancies. That is what they've asked for.
Councillor Murray missed this because I was going to bring up 16th and Lloyd.
Right.
Does that count towards our target of 78 supportive housing units? If we add those 60 plus the 65, in theory, we kind of address one.
If occupancy is achieved during the schedule laid out in Schedule A, then it counts.
Correct.
So there's some positive, Councillor Murray, to 16th and Lloyd being still in stream. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for all the discussion and all the comments that have been made around the table tonight. I just wish to focus on a positive aspect from my point of view, which is that in the guidance, there's a real focus on a rental and below market rental, and dealing with the below market rental, as has been pointed out, we're going to need a significant funding contribution. So I take in this order and in this guidance, a hope that we'll be able to achieve the kind of partnership, the kind of funding involvement that's required to secure these below market rentals, which from my point of view is exactly what our community needs. So that's going to be my focus going forward. Do we achieve the investment necessary to fulfill the guidance with respect to the below market portion of the order? Thank you.
Thank you. Council, I see no further speakers at this time. Prepared to call the question on the motion, which is for receipt. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The last item up for discussion tonight is item 810. This is council support for the Burrard Inlet Rapid Transit as a first phase bus rapid transit corridor. As the district's rep on the Mayor's Council for TransLink, I figure I'll take this one. The district council had already previously expressed its support for projects of rapid transit to the North Shore. We already had that on record with them. When this matter came forward, they said, no, this isn't just about the North Shore. Every municipality that was proposed to have a bus rapid transit upgrade was asked to make this pledge, essentially. It's a pledge of willingness to consider road reallocation, land letdowns, and other things to otherwise become a positive force to make these projects come forward. So while we already do have a motion on the books in terms of that's our affirmative support of bus rapid transit to the North Shore and other transit improvements on the North Shore, this is a reaffirmation of that in a bit of a different way. I will be moving this recommendation. I have already said, is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Ma. I have already expressed my personal support to the rest of the Mayor's Council, as I know the other North Shore mayors have already expressed that this is a priority. We've been working very closely together with through a group called North Shore Connects. This is the 3 North Shore municipalities plus the 2 First Nations government. And we have been working together collaboratively for many years to bring forward issues of joint interest, particularly around transit and transportation improvements to the North Shore. And so we actually have a very long history of working together collaboratively to try to advance our transportation issues. So this does not have a collision in any way, shape, or form with the previously mentioned motion. It doesn't have a collision with any of the objectives of the North Shore Connects group. And if it helps give our Metro Vancouver or TransLink partners assurance that we're willing to move on these types of projects, then great, I'm all for it, because we desperately need the transportation infrastructure improvements on the North Shore. So I will be supporting this. Councillor Ma, you were the seconder on the matter. Oh, Mr. Joyce, did you?
For the City of North Van Council and the District of West Van Council. So it's the 10th and the 16th, I believe, coming up. So this council deals with it first. But as the mayor mentioned, this is really just setting out once again our commitment to this as transit looks at the BERT corridors within the region.
And a very similar motion will be received, obviously, without reference to the North Shore, by all of the other bus rapid transit communities for there. So this is happening in all of our communities. Councillor Ma.
Along with affordable housing, mobility is one of the most pressing issues for the district. On the sidelines of UBCM, I met with some of the TransLink people, and the BRT across North Shore, SkyTrain coming to Phipps Exchange, if that's how it all works out, eventually would be a great outcome. But supporting the BRT now is probably a good initial step. I still have some questions, but I think it's important at this point to show our support and commitment with TransLink that, there's a whole list of things that we're supposed to do. And I want to make sure that we show that we're a willing partner, just like in the housing. We need to show the provincial government that, we're on board. Just like here, we need to show TransLink that we're on board. So I think this is a very important first step. Thank you.
Councillor Ma, Councillor Henson.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very pleased to support it. It's obviously a reasonable motion, and I appreciate the reason for us voting for it. I do hope that we continue to maintain momentum around real rapid transit to the North Shore. I mean, that's the achievement that is necessary from my point of view in order to meaningfully address transportation and mobility issues to and from the North Shore. So, and I know the feedback that I receive with respect to bus rapid transit is where people are supportive. It's a step. We're going in the right direction, but I wouldn't want bus rapid transit to substitute for real light rail rapid transit to and from the North Shore, which I think has to be our objective. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I can comment on that. I heard Mr. Craver at the beginning of the meeting speak about that matter. So to be clear, the 10-year vision for Metro Vancouver, for Mayor's Council of TransLink, which was passed unanimously at the July 28th meeting last year, before the election, was by year 3, we were to have a BRT, BERT, bus rapid transit line on the North Shore. By year 8, they were to have a design and business case for a higher level of rapid transit to the North Shore, or a mixed system of some kind, whether it is, as Councillor Ma mentioned, potentially rapid SkyTrain or rail to Phipps Exchange, and then perhaps east and west using a combination of technology. So that is still the 10-year vision. It was reaffirmed by the new Mayor's Council, and we're still working towards that. Funding is a challenge. The whole plan is $21 billion, and our annual budget is about $2.2 billion, including all of our costs and such. So there's really not a lot of capital extracted out of our normal budget. Most of the capital is extracted from the contributions from the federal and provincial government, and potentially future taxation sources. So at this point, they're asking this question in part because they need to prioritize. There's 7 or 8 BRT lines potential, each one running between $50 to $150 million in order to be able to implement them. They're going to focus on 2 or 3 of those projects, it to be delivered in the first part of the plan. And I definitely think we have a fantastic case for why we should be that the starter in that. When we were preparing for the plan and the 10-year vision, the Metro Vancouver or TransLink produced 32 different potential projects for consideration amongst the entire Metro Vancouver transit region. And of that, this was the #1 ranked project in terms of getting people out of their cars and into transit. But it was the #7 ranked project in terms of cost per kilometer. And so we're going to have some work to do to sharpen our pencil to see how this project can move higher up in the priorities in that way. One of the ways to do that is to start with bus rapid transit, show the demand, show that people will be supportive of that higher level of transit, and it helps you gain the corridor. And once you've gained the corridor and space through bus rapid transit, combination of road reallocation and new space being built, then you have a real bargaining chip in order to get that higher level of service because you've already got the route. And so it's important for us to support this project being implemented on the North Shore and then get our community to use it. Both the people commuting to the North Shore and the people who are needing to get east and west across the North Shore as well. So yeah, I'm very supportive. I hope that was useful additional information, but I don't see any other speakers at the time. Mr. Joyce wants
Just a final comment, Your Worship, to your points, which are excellent in that regard. It is obviously a cornerstone of the staff's transportation plan as well. And to that end, we've seconded Steve Carney, who you know from council, to work on this as his priority, to start with the routing and the land allocation. So you'll see more of this hopefully in the years to come, but Mr. Carney will head up that office to hopefully deliver this within the mayor's plan and the vision in the next 10 years.
All right. Well, I see no further speakers on the matter, so I'm prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. We do have a little bit of an opportunity for some reports tonight, and I'm going to follow up on what Councillor Ma mentioned, which was on Friday, a number of us participated in the Truth and Reconciliation Day observances with the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. 3 years ago when they started, it was a walk to St. Paul's, where they walked from the TWN admin building all the way to St. Paul's. It was a very long walk. And then last year, it was a walk back from St. Paul's, the residential school system, back to the admin offices. This year, they decided that they wanted to have everybody in one spot because it's a challenge for a lot of the seniors to be able to travel. And the layout was impactful. 21 elders were lined up directly in front of the visitors and delegates and dignitaries and told their stories about how they were impacted by the residential school system, including sexual abuse, physical abuse, just fear, crushing of their culture and language, and the impacts that it had on them and their family through intergenerational trauma. And it was very impactful. And so I wanted to express my appreciation to the TWN Council and Administration for inviting us to participate in that. And they obviously have our commitment to work towards reconciliation in our joint communities here. So I think that's the only report I'm going to give today. Would anybody else like to add a report? Councillor Back first.
Your Worship, if I may, I'm going to use my time for my report in a slightly different way tonight to talk about someone who our community lost recently. On August 31st, I lost a friend and our community lost one of its true champions, Lee Grills. She was a longtime resident of the district. She lived in the Upper Lonsdale area, and she was truly a force to be reckoned with, someone who gave so much to our community. She was, over the course of her life, a champion for women's rights. She was actually one of the founding members of the North Shore Women's Center, and she also received an honorary doctorate of laws from Capilano University for her work in this area. She was someone who loved politics, and that's kind of how we connected. And she quickly became a friend. She believed strongly in the importance of being involved in her community, and she was always reaching out to me to share her ideas, but more often her true appreciation for the good work that our staff do, largely our operations staff. And I was always forwarding those emails to the various managers who appreciated the positive feedback. And I know our staff did as well. So Lee, she led by example, and I think her positive light will continue to shine in our community. And I want to express my sincerest condolences to her family, including her daughter Karen and her son-in-law Ralph.
Very appropriate. Thank you very much, Councillor Back. Would anybody else like to make a report? Councillor Murray?
Well, I would just like to also honor Diana Bellhouse. She was a constant attendee at council meetings. She was part of the Delbert Community Association for many years. She was a staunch advocate to create a park within her neighborhood. She was someone who held dear those gathering places in local neighborhoods, and was in this council chamber not too long ago, and she passed away at a few weeks ago. And there was not many details in her obituary, even to the day that she passed away. It was not included, sadly, but I know that we benefited from her, her input into this council over the years, and yeah, so I wanted to honor her.
Diana was also a very important part of the beginning of the library here in North Vancouver. She was part of the bookmobile club that started out transferring books around the community by van until we established the first location of our library, which she was one of the founding members of. So she was a very important part of the library services in North Vancouver as well. Thank you very much, Councillor Murray, for bringing that up. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. Last Thursday, I attended a open house put on by SFU in Hollyburn. It's called a Seniors Lab. They're looking at some housing solutions, and it was a very good session. There's a lot of people from the community, but they're looking at different options to try to look for ways for seniors who may be on their own to either share their place or rent out their place, and hopefully by that they get some companionship, and maybe the person that moves in will also help with chores and stuff. So it's really about community building. It was my first session, and hopefully there'll be more coming from that. And on a second note, of course, we were all at UBCM, and I did miss the dinner, but I wanted to maybe put up something to acknowledge Councillor Lisa Murray for her long service award. So
I need to get a new camera. That wasn't a clear enough camera for.
No, but well done. 26 years or
28.
Oh, sorry, 28 years.
This was for 25. So I was always under the impression it was every 5 years, but it's a 25-year award. So yeah, every quarter century. So there
Well,
was.
we put it that way.
There was, I think there was like 5 of us that received them that night.
Well, Don Bell was in the
Don
group,
Bell
so-
was one. Yeah, Don Bell also received one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think, well, we obviously had virtual element or UBCM meetings for 2020, 2021, and
Yeah.
2022. So that's why they weren't doing the recognitions necessarily during that time. But
Yeah. It was nice.
yes, no, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's great to be there. I was very glad to come and see you for that. I thought they should have made you do a speech, but maybe next time.
It was good.
Anybody else like to make a report? Okay. I will accept adjournment. Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Thank you to the staff for preparing the reports for council's consideration tonight. Thank you to the members of the public for contributing their thoughts and comments and sticking with us through the meeting. And again, council, thank you very much for your consideration of the matters. Have a great night, everyone.